All right. All right. So welcome everybody to The Leftovers, a special edition where we'll be reviewing Taylor Swift's new Eras tour. We both were able to catch that last night. VIP access, front row seats. Hassan, what were your thoughts on the show?
I think she's incredible.
She is.
What a generational talent.
Unbelievable.
And the best we got in America.
She is the best of us. In actuality, we're going to be discussing the conflict between Israel and Gaza that's happening right now. Obviously, there's been a lot of emotional, charged stuff going on, but we're going to discuss everything. But I do want to make something very clear at the top of the show here, is that I've seen a lot of people expecting us to come froth and argue, and our friendship is going to end and the show is going to end or something like that. And I'm sorry to disappoint you guys, but that's definitely not what we're planning on doing here. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Instead, we're going to solve the conflict in its entirety. Let's go.
It's never going to happen.
That's what we're going to do. People
who are like, it's just not happening. That's not the point of the show, which I like. And actually, it's becoming more so now, is that we can have, I sound so dumb and corny, but like we can have difficult conversations and not hate each other, which is important because
taboo topics.
Exactly. Just like, who's doing that?
I think that was Fresh and Fit.
Fresh and Fit, taboo topics.
No, it was Ab and Preach, I think.
Look, if people like me and Hassan, which are basically so close to the same ideals, can't have a amicable conversation about it, then there's no hope for anybody.
I agree.
Thanks.
The hummus.
Where do you want to get started? Because one thing I do want to say, and this is not necessarily about this issue in particular, but in general, I feel like a lot of people do not have a way to contextualize news and information without adding a little bit of drama seasoning to it, where like it's not necessarily here's what's going on, this is my opinion on it. It's always there needs to be a secondary market, you know, of like, oh well, Ethan said this, or Hassan said that. What do you think about this? Or oh my God, they're gonna fall apart. Like I think that betrays the values that you are trying to show people. If you're saying like, I care about people dying, I don't want them to die, I want people to live freely, and then you simultaneously try to have discussions almost entirely around commentators and Twitter spats and whatnot, I feel like that is unproductive.
Right. And actually, people are doing that to both of us.
Yes.
Frankly. In fact, so much so, there's this one video that I saw on our subreddit, and I see it on Twitter too. It's getting a lot of likes and views. It's so fucking bananas.
I have not even watched it.
So
I just saw it and I was like, oh God.
They spliced me talking separately about something and Hassan talking separately about something, and they spliced it together to make it look like I was telling you that you deserve to die. Here, let me see it.
Jesus.
No, look at the title of it. It goes, debate. Ethan Klein tells his former co-host, Hassan Piker, he deserves to be burned alive by terrorists for his different views on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Die! And by the way, we got a community note on it.
Thank you, Elon.
1.5 million views, though. But anyway,
but that goes to show you.
People are doing that too on the one thing that pisses me off is people who are cutting shit that is like trying to make it sound like I said that if you're pro-Palestine, you deserve to die, which is fucking nuts. Clearly cut. And I've seen people doing the same to you.
Here's why they're doing that. Okay, here's why they're doing that to you specifically. Because you're Jewish, you lived in Israel, and Ela was, of course, a mandatory conscript, also being an Israeli citizen. So people don't know what your perspective is and immediately say, okay, you want all Palestinians to die. You want Israel to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip and ethnically displace in the West Bank. I don't believe that that's your perspective, and
You don't
I've never.
believe it. It's not.
No, I know that that's not your perspective. I'm
Just
saying
to be
that
totally clear about that.
Yes, but I think that it's important for you to clarify, and then I can clarify my position as well, because a lot of people, despite the fact that I know that I have to be on a very delicate, tight rope when discussing these matters, because it does often get racialized fairly quickly, and it's done as a deliberate attempt to try to misconstrue your position and debate a straw man. I think that you can, describe your position, then we can go forward.
Well, another thing to note, it is incredible how many people want this show to break up. Like they're fantasize about it.
Yeah.
And I find that odd. I find that odd.
No, it's what I just described earlier. It's drama.
Like,
there's no way to contextualize the news because news is fucking boring and oftentimes it's depressing, right? When you see dead babies, when you see fucking building blocks being reduced to rubble, that shit is, one, usually impossible to contextualize if you're living in like fucking Connecticut, you know what I mean? And two, it's depressing and boring. What's not boring is, well, this is my favorite commentator duking it out with my favorite commentator in a way that I can actually analyze, in a way that I can actually understand, and I'm gonna go to battle.
Oh, by the way, chat is off. You fucking savages in chat. Got to pipe
Chat
down
is
today.
right.
It's time to sit down and listen, right?
Sit
Dan?
down and listen.
So here, I won't interrupt you. I think it's good to clarify your position.
Let me clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, clarify your position on Israel and Palestine in general.
Well, first of all, just to talk about this clip that I guess some people have seen, I made an analogy. You might not disagree with it. My point was that, you know what, I don't need to explain that. Do I?
I don't know what the clip is, but I care more about you getting your point across.
Yeah, here.
As it pertains to Israel and Palestine. Like,
yeah. Here's what I'll say. And I like to say this at the top because people are always going to call me a Zionist. People are going to call me a IDF supporter, genocidal, all this shit. And I've been saying it every fucking day, every time I can say it. So if you see anybody saying that, you know they're liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're hellbent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building, the chances that you're killing children is pretty much 100%. Okay? It's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting. I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead, like, 5-year-old daughter. I mean, and there was another one that, like, as a father, it's even hard to talk about. This dude was holding his infant. It was like a year old. And he was like patting her on the back and saying like his final goodbye. I mean, he's holding her like she's alive, like he's just burping her or something. I didn't expect to get emotional about that, but like, I'm a new dad and that shit really fucks me up. And I hate to see it. It's not right. I think people in Israel that support the government and the government need to watch that shit. I think Israel shutting off water, power, and food to Gaza is insane. It doesn't even make sense. Like, what's the end goal there exactly?
I wanna cut in here for a second, and while you recollect your thoughts and say something. The feelings that you are demonstrating here, and the empathy that you're demonstrating and showing towards Palestinians, is unfortunately not represented by our administration, and it's not represented by our media. And I think that the irony is that in the aftermath of the Palestinian the Palestinian actions in southern towns in Israel, led by Hamas, the reaction from the Israeli population, specifically anti-Zionists living in Israel who are Jewish, and even Zionists living in Israel, was more tempered and more empathetic to the plight of Palestinians, and truly understood that the violence of this occupation and the violence of an apartheid regime and the violence of endless bombing campaigns in an open-air prison was squarely at the heart of the violence that Israelis experienced on October 7th. I think that is very courageous for people living in Israel proper who lost their friends to come out and speak out against their own government immediately. And it is cowardly and disgusting for Americans who are thousands of miles away, who will never be impacted by this, to refuse to reckon with that and to continue demanding more blood and aligning themselves with an insanely unpopular, insanely reactionary, far-right government who has deliberately propped up Hamas as the singular force time and time again, who has humiliated, bullied, imprisoned, and occupied and stolen the lands of so many innocent Palestinians. And it is shocking to me that the consensus in Israel is more tempered,
and that's what pisses me off
than
too.
the consensus in American media.
Like, I've seen way too many fucking people acting like all Israelis are fair targets. They're all settlers. They're all genocidal. Like, there's way too much fucking dehumanization of Israelis and the refusal to see, like, even understand their perspective at all. Like, if you can't understand why, after Hamas murdered up to now probably close to 2,000 people, if you don't understand why Israel would want to retaliate, then you're not in favor of peace. You're not, because I understand, and a lot of Israelis understand why Hamas exists and why Palestinians and Gazans want to fucking kill Israelis. I understand that, and I have that empathy. I feel that a lot of people, not all, even a minority, but enough that it's noticeable, don't have that level of empathy where they see Israelis as like full-blown, diverse human beings that aren't fucking genocidal freaks, you know what I mean? They just happen to be on the side that has a bigger fucking military and has international support. And all the result of that is obviously that a ton of Palestinians die.
I think
like, how's there ever going to be peace, like, genuinely, if there's not empathy to at least understand? Like, I'm not to agree with, but to at least understand
Look, I think Edward Said said it best, that it is not about, it's not even necessarily about designification of Israel. It's about maintaining peace so that everyone has a right to return and be able to live comfortably in their own homes. This area of historic Palestine did have Jews, Christians, and Muslims living side by side before the 1948 Nakba and before the British occupation. There was a time where there was peaceful coexistence. Ultimately, though, I think that the reason why a lot of people get really passionate about this, or the reason why I think the American media does a disservice to show the full breadth of the conflict or even the Israeli perspective by regularly running to the right of the Israeli government. That is, I think, by design. It is because we give a lot of money to Israel for its security and its defensive operations, as we call it. And I think a lot of that money has to be justified to the eyes of the American population. That is, those are our weapons ultimately that are being used and being deployed. It's our training as well. And it is very beneficial for Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and many other defense contractors who saw tremendous gains in their on their stocks immediately after October 7. So to say that people do not have empathy for Israel, I don't necessarily agree with. I think your judgment is made on what you see on Twitter. You're like, there's an unimaginable amount of violence that took place in Israel, and then how can people immediately go to defend Palestinians in this action? And it's
Not
understandable.
Palestinians.
Well, I mean, people
Just
were,
to be clear.
yeah, immediately go to defend these actions in general, and it's because emotions are high in that moment. But I don't think that I do not think that Western media across the board gives a similar perspective, one that you have on the Palestinian plight. I don't think that is represented in the media.
It's worth saying the Western media refuses to humanize Gaza. Okay, like that's the same thing.
It is by design,
and so,
so
it's just people. I'd like people to have. Let me finish what I was saying, and then you can kind of clarify your spot.
Go ahead.
I don't understand the water and power and food being shut off. Like, that makes no fucking sense. What's the end goal there other than just to let people die? Like, hospitals don't have power. Respirators are turning off. Surgeries are being canceled.
Red Crescent paramedics were bombed yesterday after being allowed into the area to take care of people that were stuck inside of the rubble. They died.
Mm-hmm.
9 UN officials have died so far. Multiple journalists have died so far. It's relentless, and it is chaotic. It is ethnic cleansing, and every single media operative in the United States and in the Western world, and the majority of our politicians have championed it.
I was watching the Israeli news with Ela this morning, and she was translating it for me. On the news, they were saying the strategy is to get in as much bombing as possible before the international community makes them stop.
Yeah.
How fucked up and cynical is that?
Well, yeah.
But they just openly said that, right, Ela?
It's like news anchors like speculating about the situation and all giving their thoughts. It's not an official like
it's an analysis
government or IDF telling their strategy.
Well,
but they're all speculating, and they were saying how, like, in their opinion, we have a short time to respond before, the humanitarian cause there is going to be so bad that everyone will tell Israel, you guys need to stop. So some of the citizens are actually upset because they want them to respond harsher.
Right. It's crazy. That's crazy. I want to say this about settlers in the West Bank are religious zealots. They're monsters. They're genocidal, fucking fundamental monsters. They are also, I would even say, settlers, they're participating in this dangerous conflict. Okay? And they're putting themselves in this dangerous place. Now, I want to make it clear just while I'm on this point, the people who were murdered outside of Gaza were not settlers. Those were normal motherfucking people living normal lives, living on kibbutz and like communes, fucking communists, living like a peaceful life with their families. They were not settlers. Settlers are involved in this war, I believe.
There used to be settlers in Gaza. The military had to forcibly remove them from Gaza so they could completely shut it off and begin sieges whenever they felt like mowing the lawn.
So, and anyway, the Israeli government enables the settlements. They encourage it with the express purpose of erasing Palestinian land and making peace near as impossible as they can.
So there's something important to mention here, important to acknowledge here. I think that that what you just described, especially in the West Bank, which is settler terrorism, at least according to international law, and it's fully understood to be an illegal occupation, demands constant military support, because you cannot, over the course of 75 years, build settlements and act like you are turning a blind eye to it, maybe sometimes halt it, maybe sometimes continue those operations of building said settlements, bulldoze homes, build roads that specifically partition off areas where Palestinians are supposed to be living on their own land in the two-state solution that has been reaffirmed time and time again. You can't have that be your peaceful coexistence project and not recognize that of course Palestinians see that and think, okay, well, what the fuck are we supposed to do? There's no Hamas in the West Bank, and yet the Palestinian Authority is like collaborating with Israeli security operations, giving up 14-year-olds that were throwing rocks and shit like that, while they're losing their land, they're losing their homes. The area, according to B'Tselem, which is an Israeli organization, the area of West Bank of all of the agricultural land and all of the partitioned off lands that have been expanded into through settler terrorism, which is completely illegal, went from like 10% in 1967 to more than 75%. The areas that are partitioned off also have no contiguity, which means that, like, if you are Palestinian living in your own home in the West Bank, in order to get to your uncle's house, for example, you have to go through a multitude of IDF checkpoints. There are 2 separate license plates given to Palestinians living in the West Bank versus Israelis living in the West Bank. And I think many brave and very intelligent and very empathetic Jewish activists have talked about this in far better terms than I have. But one that comes to mind immediately is Gabor Mate, a Holocaust survivor and a very famous physician, very famous doctor, where he said it best. He said he has friends that live in America and Palestinians that live in Canada that cannot return to their homes in the West Bank, that cannot return to their homes in even Israel proper, their family homes. And yet, his friends, if regardless of whether or not they've ever lived in Israel, or regardless of whether or not where they're from around the world, can go to Israel and go specifically to West Bank and be able to sit on top of Palestinian land and own that land. That is horrifying. That is impossible to come to terms with. And I think that violence is a necessity in the maintenance of such a structure, which now many NGOs and even former officials, former Israeli officials, are considering is an apartheid. And it has been for some time now. And of course, that violence is going to, that violence that Palestinians endure on a daily basis is going to create more reactionary forces within it. This is something that I have said about the invasion of Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. And this is something that I even said about Russia invading Ukraine, is that more reactionary forces are going to be seen as the emancipatory forces when an irredentist power or an imperialist power goes and tries to seize land that it does not own. This is the second part of the brutality of the occupation that has made it seem as though Palestinians have no choice, that has created no opportunities for them, that has led to Hamas being able to seize more and more power after being democratically elected one time in 2006, pretty much.
Right. And I do want to make clear that, again, as we talk about settlers and all this shit, that settlers are not the same as regular Israeli civilians. And I think, you know, having been
Yeah,
listening...
they're American.
Actually, a lot of them are American.
Yeah, they are the most...
Yeah.
They are... my friend Noah Colwyn calls this the zealotry of the convert, where I was talking to him yesterday. He's a former editor-in-chief of Jewish Currents. I think he was editor-in-chief. He still is a contributing editor. We were talking about like the most reactionary, the most violent activity often comes from the likes of Baruch Goldstein, right? An American Israeli who went in I believe 1993 into a mosque and shot and killed 29 Palestinians who were praying during prayer. A person that was hailed as a hero by the current administrator of the entirety of the Israeli police force, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Itamar Ben-Gvir and Benjamin Netanyahu are incredibly far-right politicians that now control the Israeli government. The last time that there was any kind of negotiation between Palestinians in good faith, between a person who was still a Zionist, like Yitzhak Rabin, they killed him. And the people that called for his assassination, like Ben-Gvir, are now in positions of power in Israel to show you how much the attitudes and the governance has changed over the course of the past 3 decades in Israel.
I want to say that I agree, and a lot of people in Israel do. It's disgusting, the people that are there right now in power. And if I can add something about the settlers, that's another point of frustration for a lot of Israelis. They send the soldiers to protect them. Soldiers that have to put their life on hold because the IDF is mandatory. They're just 18-year-old, they're children. They have to go and protect the settlers. The settlers don't go to the IDF. Orthodox people don't serve in the IDF.
Fucking nice.
Yeah, this is
insane.
yeah.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm done.
No,
I was going to say that of the amount of people that don't know that I've seen that IDF is mandatory service is crazy. Hila is not serving the IDF ideologically because she wants to fucking kill Gazans or whatever bullshit people always say about her. It's mandatory conscription. It's mandatory. Every Israeli has to
That's why there's
serve.
organizations such as IDF Veterans Against the Occupation that are very are organizations that I rely on when making assessments on what's going on the ground in Israel as well. And here's the thing. This is a relatively controversial perspective. It's just that the official government attitude has oftentimes, or at all, as a matter of fact, ever reflected any kind of attitude within the Israeli population, as it has either deliberately or in secret continued the settler expansion protocols since 1967 especially. So that's basically burning the candle on both ends. Okay? On the one hand, you're telling Palestinians, hey, if you collaborate with us, we are still going to have these psychotic American settlers come to your uncle's house and take it away from you, bulldoze your house, partition your neighborhoods, okay, and set up a two-tier checkpoint system that B'Tselem calls, like I said, the permit regime, and constantly harass you. They can spit on you, and if they spit on you, the IDF's official protocol in that situation is to defend the settlers. They're not there to defend the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. Like, they might in certain instances, but overwhelmingly, their job there is to specifically defend the settlers.
And again, like Ela was touching on, you're sending young men out in harm's way to protect these provocateur, fucking religious zealots, radicals. And again, like Elis, the irony being that they don't even need to serve the military. I mean, it's a fucking joke.
Yeah.
So I think that it's especially important for people to keep in mind that Israel is so far from a monolith. It's people need to understand that, and that people need to understand that we're not all guilty of the crimes of our government, because if that was the case, heaven would be empty at the end of the day. I mean, this was the analogy I was making. If you're American, and if we're going to blame the citizens of Israel and say they're all, and some people have been saying this, and I have clips that I want to watch later, saying that all Israelis are occupiers in fair game and deserve to die, essentially. If you're willing to say that, then if, like, a terrorist cell comes to a fucking neighborhood in LA and wants to do revenge for the million Iraqis that the American government murdered during that war, then you're telling me you would have no problem with these terrorists coming and killing everybody you know?
I mean, you are sitting next to someone who said America deserved 9/11, by the way.
Okay,
so
well, how would you feel?
I want to let you know.
How would you feel if people were blaming you for the Iraq war and coming and killing your fucking children and your grandma and your parents and your friends and your family, burning your house down, burning people alive?
I don't disagree with you on civilian casualties. I think that ultimately we have a moral obligation to speak out against our government and do everything we physically can to stop that kind of bloodshed. I agree. And I think that plenty of Americans at least kind of recognize that this is a war machine that they cannot stop anymore. So my goal at least is to get people to not champion it. And the same goes for Israeli action, the Israeli government's actions specifically, just like the American government's action. Because at the end of the day, what I want and what I believe many of my friends who are Palestinian advocates and activists and Israeli activists as well on the ground, what they all want is peaceful coexistence. But peaceful coexistence will never be achieved as long as governments can behave in whichever way they want, especially as it comes to blood and soil propaganda, and the consequences of that propaganda being, blood and soil actions. That's same with America, same with Israel.
I think that Israelis, and again, I hope that you'll see where they're coming from when you say they're cagey, they're paranoid, they're scared, and they feel threatened constantly.
Yeah.
And so when Israelis see a ton of leftists talking about, go Hamas, cheering on Hamas, or saying like super hyperbolic shit about like civilians are all settlers, or or saying shit like, listen, it's a revolution. What do you expect? Like, what is a revolution supposed to look like? Or whatever of all of these qualifiers, basically, that people want to make. The Israelis see that and they say, oh, these people just fucking hate us. They just want to kill everybody. That's why we're going to vote for these scumbags.
I don't think that the people that vote for those scumbags are motivated by like some random Twitter person being like, "This is a revolution."
It's a feeling that people get. It's not a
paranoia-
random tweet.
Yeah. So
Ethan is
Hold on.
right.
Go
really
ahead.
good
Go
point.
ahead, Hila.
I want to say Ethan is right, and so many people in Israel just feel like it's an existential threat. It's just this, everybody wants us dead. That's how we grow up. I grew up like that. All of our borders, they all want us dead.
Rockets are always coming
I was afraid to go on
over.
a bus as a child.
And again-
it's like that's your life. You're under threat all the time.
And it's not, and it's important to say this is not about right or wrong. It's about having empathy for the Israeli experience.
Okay.
And how, and it's not about right and wrong. I have to say that. I have to emphasize that. It's got nothing to do with that. Okay? It's about understanding their perspective and knowing that when you have these super, accepting views on violence and revolution and all this shit towards Israelis, it's not one tweet that people see, Hassan. It's all the shit people see over the years all the time. And it causes them to act irrationally.
Okay. I think that you bring up a really good point about paranoia. The reason why, well, first of all, I mean, we don't have to get into like the history of why Jewish people would be understandably paranoid and worried, considering how they have historically been singled out as villains every single fucking time, from blood libels and pogroms all the way to the Holocaust. So.
And so you would understand it's hard for some people to distinguish. No, I know you do, but 100%. I'm just saying this. I'm just saying this.
100%.
You might understand how it's hard for some people to distinguish anti-Semitism between like criticism, especially when it's like a criticism that's very lax on violence against Israelis.
So you're absolutely correct on that front. Here's what I will even dive into further, and this is something I talked about on my stream as well. The paranoia now that manifests inside of Israel, as far as I understand, like I don't live in Israel. I've never been to Israel. Is, at least from everything that I have read on not just Israel but also Apartheid South Africa and the Algerian anti-colonial action against the French and numerous other formations of occupation and the emancipatory struggle there, the paranoia manifests and becomes a part of your identity because of the violence that is a necessity for the maintenance of apartheid. Because it's, of course, it's almost.
Look, Israel was under threat before all this shit happened. I mean,
what's up?
From the moment Israel was established, the neighbors were trying to kill them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we agree on that.
Really?
I will say that I think that Nakba was an unjustifiable act of violence that was the formation of the state. Now, you can say every state is formed through an act of violence. All enclosures are defended through acts of violence, certainly. But I think that there was, this extends, like what you say to West Bank, what you say about West Bank settlers was the original position of the Israeli state's formation. And this does not, in current day, justify like random Israeli children that are born inside of Israel proper to be considered enemy combatants. I agree with you there 100%, because that is not problem solving. That is looking for vengeance. However, if we are to say that like Israel from its development, like in its inception, has always been under the threat of violence from other nations, bordering nations, certainly, sure, but Israel's formation was a violent one.
But let's just be real. Here, let's be practical. I'm talking to the Israeli psyche.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, 1973, every bordering Arab state wanted to just coalesce to destroy Israel. Okay? Like, this is ingrained in the Israeli psyche, this kinds of shit. And even back then in 1970, people were just born there. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not even saying right or wrong. I'm saying it's important to empathize with the Israeli experience if you ever want to achieve peace. Because otherwise, the only other option is one side kills the other side completely.
Yes.
That's the only end to this otherwise.
And the side that's going to kill the other side completely is not going to be the Palestinian side. That's the point. Like, that's never... I don't think that is ever going to happen. I don't even believe that is legitimately what every single Palestinian wants either. Just like I don't believe that's what Israelis want across the board.
I'm not saying anybody wants that. I'm saying that's what the peace that they're working towards when they don't have the ability to empathize with the enemy. You don't see them as human beings. They're never going to fucking see you as human beings either.
I know, but
you're never going to meet in the middle. And they'll
you
never
recognize that the same goes for, like...
I'm talking about both sides, man.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you that dehumanization does occur, but I also believe that one side does still hold all of the power. And that is the side that is the state that has been backed by the entirety of the Western world, that has an incredible security apparatus that for the first time ever in 50 years was actually shattered, which is why I think there's like a lot of fear internally inside of Israel and a lot of anger towards the security candidate, Benjamin Netanyahu specifically. But overall, it is certainly Israel's conflict to end. You know what I mean?
Hila, you were trying to say something.
Can I add that my generation's grandparents are people that survived the Holocaust, and they escaped to Israel to start a country for Jewish people because we all know the Holocaust. They were all, butchered. And what happened this time is a really scary reminder to all of us Jewish people. And that's how I feel, at least, that it's a reminder. The Holocaust wasn't that long ago, and every year on Holocaust Day, the thing they tell you is never forget. You always have to tell the stories to everybody about what happened at the Holocaust, and it's always like something taken for granted for me. You just grow up and you're like, yeah, Holocaust Day, it happened. We all get it, but what happened this time is really scary, and it really does bring up this topic. And
see, I don't think that you can even say something like that without starting a debate, and I don't think that's right.
I think the reason why people would react to it, or even myself, as a matter of fact, would react to that is because while you're absolutely correct and your feelings are totally valid, what is happening currently is a ongoing, at least 75-year campaign of ethnic displacement upon people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust, and that is. And
dude, we're just talking about the Israeli psyche. I don't.
No, I understand.
So what is it you're saying though? Like we all know that, but we have to be real about how we interpret everybody's suffering. Everybody is like, bro, you don't know how crazy it was. Like, we were listening to the news on the day it happened live, and families are calling in whispering. The terrorists are killing their children in front of them, burning people alive in safe houses. Shit, you know what I mean? Shooting babies with AK-47s. And so I'm just saying, like, it's important to empathize with how a Jewish person, or specifically an Israeli, might feel hearing these phone calls.
There are kids that survived because they were laying under their dead parents' bodies, and they laid there for hours, the whole day, and that's how they survived. And the last time we heard stories like that was at the Holocaust.
And I'm not saying it's not about right or wrong. It's just about like having the empathy to understand your quote enemy, to understand the perspective. And I'm not asking Gazans necessarily even to be like, oh, well, I appreciate what they're going through. I'm talking about like people who want to fucking debate it all day long. And, you know, this stuff does influence people. The demonstrations you see out there that happened like immediately afterwards, these people have an effect on attitudes around the world.
I don't think that they have any say or any effect on the Western world's united defense of Israel.
It affects anti-Semitism, and it affects how people treat Jews, and it normalizes, by the way, treating Israelis like animals.
I don't believe that we should treat Israelis like animals. And one thing that you have, I think, that many people do not, is the experiences that you mentioned as far as children hiding under their parents' bodies is, in this very fucked up way, identical to the existence of people living in Gaza every single day under brutal fire from a much more superior military force. The reality is that most of the Western world, not only does not see that, but also immediately rushes to equate people saying "Free Palestine" across the board in an unflinching way to a defense of Hamas or Hamas operations and whatnot. Are there people who do defend Hamas? Certainly. But ultimately, the overwhelming majority of activists that I know, the Haaretz editorial board, and the perspective of like Shin Bet officials that say that Israel's actions in the West Bank is becoming a security risk because it is radicalizing Palestinians into taking an incredibly anti-Israel posture. Former Mossad members, former Shin Bet officials united in saying the same exact thing.
And you know, these terror attacks do the same. They radicalize Israelis.
Of course, I understand that. Violence begets violence. That is a constant no matter what. So what we have to remember is who holds the power to scale it back, who holds the power to stop the violence.
I think a lot of people do know that and remember that.
Yeah, and so when people say that this is this violence that occurred in Israel proper is directly a consequence of the brutal apartheid regime and the conditions that it set forth for Palestinian people.
That's a fine statement that I agree with.
Yeah. So when they say that, you're saying that people equate that with like a defense of Hamas.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
There are people
that is not what I'm saying.
There are Gazan
Just
people.
to be totally clear, dude.
There are Palestinian Authority people. There are people in Gaza that are not Hamas at all, or there are Palestinian Authority people that have been going and doing the rounds in Western media. And the question always is, do you condemn these actions? Do you condemn these actions? Of course they condemn the actions. But the reality is that after condemning the actions 1,000 times over, it feels like the goal there, if you want to understand and empathize with the Muslim side of this conversation, it feels like the goal there is to derail, to stop talking about Gaza, stop talking about Palestinian people, just condemn the actions and shut the fuck up. And even if you do, as I have time and time again, people still go, well, your name is Hassan, you're Muslim, you're a supporter of terrorism. And this happened in the immediate aftermath of 2001 and 9/11. And ironically, as far as I have seen, at least in the Israeli left, the position is significantly more tempered than the American liberals were at that point, where George W. Bush's approval rating shot up to 91% after 9/11, where America's comfortable security blanket was penetrated, and our collective consciousness changed in that very moment to say, oh my God, we can actually experience this violence in our own homes. And the same goes for Israel as well, where you've mentioned rocket fire. Over the course of the past multiple decades, since 2000 onward, before the October 7 operation, that the casualties were, of course, asymmetrical. Rocket fire still ended up killing people in Israel proper.
Again, it's like
But
you can
that-
look at the numbers, but like, of course, because Israel has it's still the provocation, it's still the attempt. You know what I mean? Just because they have the technology to shoot it out of the sky doesn't mean that the people in Israel are not going to be affected by it.
No, I understand that, but there's
Also, I want to say
there's
I
something
don't.
different, though.
I need to make something clear
What's
that
up?
you touched on. I don't think people who say I support Palestine are pro-Hamas. That's fucking insane.
Okay.
It's like the opposite of everything I've ever said. Okay, there is something I noticed that rubbed me wrong, which was that as the news was breaking, as people were still calling in saying, I'm in my safe house, I hear the terrorists outside killing my neighbors. People are on Twitter or whatever, or activists, whoever, saying, let's go Palestine. Go Palestine. So how am I? It's the timing, Hassan. It's important. Like, we got to make this huge distinction. When people are saying go Palestine as they're terrorists killing people, that to me, I don't know who else they're cheering on other than Hamas.
Okay.
Now, if you wait, like, you know, it's the timing, dude. It does matter.
There's an asymmetry to the violence, but there's also an asymmetry to the coverage as well. What do I mean by this? Mia Khalifa is a good example. You and I were talking about this on the phone earlier. Mia Khalifa said things that I find to be distasteful and wrong. Okay?
Worse than that.
I think it was distasteful and wrong. I think it was callous. The indifference to violence that civilians are subjected to on the Israeli side as well is callous. However, the reaction to Mia Khalifa has never ever occurred on the other side.
You're right.
When Israel is
You're right.
engaging in bombing campaigns.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
And like you said, the horrific images that you saw that draw so much emotion out of you, of, like, you know, Palestinian fathers holding their daughters in this open air prison. There is no equivalence. I think a lot of people who have been advocates for Palestinians for many, many years, especially if they're Muslim, know this reality, that you have to be incredibly careful all the time with your rhetoric, and that even in an emotional moment, you can never never say something that will be misconstrued. And Mia Khalifa said something that was inappropriate and unacceptable.
Hold on. She showed a picture of terrorists roaming in a pickup truck, murdering civilians. She described that as a Renaissance painting.
Yeah.
And she went further and said, will the Palestinian freedom fighters please flip their phone
I know,
vertically? I mean, that's worse than unacceptable.
So
it's evil.
So you're correct on that.
Okay.
So let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
When Lindsey Graham goes on and says this is a religious war and we must ethnically cleanse, we must wipe our enemies,
should get the same coverage.
No, I know, but it doesn't, Ethan. That's the point. Like,
I
Marco
understand.
Rubio, Marco Rubio's call for ethnic cleansing. These are people in positions of power. These are people who are literally facilitating in the bloodshed. These are people who actually are engaging in the continuation. These are not former porn stars who were Christian Lebanese who now
whatever, dude. She was getting a lot of attention. People were liking it. It wasn't like, but here's the problem.
That doesn't.
Here's
but
the
that's
problem.
meaningless, is
Bro,
what
let
I'm
me
saying
talk.
in the grand scheme of things, because that doesn't.
Hassan,
stop
let
the
me make my
bombs.
point.
No, go ahead.
When you say, like, the timing is fucked up, or like, why does Mia Khalifa get all this shit? And it's like always a whataboutism. It's always like, you can never just say yes, and also, can we fucking hold Lindsey Graham accountable? Which I agree, and it's crazy the shit they say, and they should get more attention for it. But it's like there's a refusal to acknowledge, like, It's always about like, well, what about us? Which I understand, but it's like you have to say, yes, you have this thing, and we also have this thing, and not like in the same breath say, but yes, but like it just doesn't feel. It feels fucked up.
I think the former Palestinian Authority member went on like BBC and did the rounds in the UK said it best, where it was every single time you bring me on here when Palestinians have done anything, you demand condemnation from me. Okay, we have done this. We have done this so many times. I am not Hamas. My family members were killed by Israel. Six-year-olds, like 6 of my family members were killed by the Israeli occupying force. I have condemned it every single time. I've condemned Hamas every single time. But the reality is that no such condemnation is demanded from the media when Israeli officials are brought on to talk about like genuinely genocidal terms in which they're wiping out Gaza. And that is a constant, and that has never, ever been anything, like there has never been any equivalence whatsoever. And I think that people who are passionate, or people who say, people who are callously indifferent to the wanton violence of retaliation that is reactionary to apartheid are thinking that they can get away with saying these sorts of things because they've seen people who are defenders of Israel say infinitely worse things as more bombing campaigns have continued. More than 1,200, almost 2,000 Israelis died. Israelis are terrified of a violent retaliation, right? Israelis now understand better than ever before the feeling that people in Gaza experience on a daily basis, the fear that they live with on a daily basis. That is going to breed more hostility, and that is going to play Palestinians directly into the hands of the most radical, the most fundamentalist forces that were directly propped up by the Israeli government, by Mossad. Hamas was seen as a counterweight, a counterbalance to secular forces and Marxist and socialist forces who also were violently, who participated in violent acts as well. However, the fundamentalist Islamist Muslim Brotherhood cutout was directly logistically supported by the Israeli government and has been propped up specifically by even Netanyahu and every other Israeli government as the only force to take seriously for Palestinians. It's impossible to ignore this when talking about the violent retaliation. I think that
I agree, dude.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that. I think equally it's important for Israelis to understand why there is, if the Israelis cannot empathize with the idea that why people want to do violent retaliation, why people support Hamas, then we're also never going to have peace.
Yes. And
everybody needs to empathize.
And I think it's more important than ever to ensure that people recognize that both in the Western world that props up the far-right Israeli regime, that turns a blind eye to the violence, and it's important for our brothers and sisters that are living in Israel proper, that are anti-Zionists, that are also fighting that very same battle every day, to make sure that people understand that the only way out of this, well, there's 2 different ways out of this. It's ethnic cleansing. It's like doing a final solution to the Palestinians, or it's a pathway towards developing a nation state where Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Jews can live, coexist, and have equal rights and equal representation.
Right. At the end of the day, all I'm asking is for people to be able to say that, terrorism is bad. no matter what, without an exception, without subtext. No, listen, without a fucking asterisk that's like, yeah, but, you know, I mean, what the fuck, man?
No, I understand where you're coming from with that. I think,
and I'm not saying you do it, by the way.
Giannis Varoufakis talked about this, where he said there was a practice in the ANC in apartheid South Africa that was called necklacing. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it was brutal. The ANC originally under leadership of Nelson Mandela demonstrated peacefully multiple times. There was a police retaliation in apartheid South Africa where 69 demonstrators died. Obviously, the conditions were brutal. They had this concept called a pencil test, you know what I mean? Like where they would put a pencil in your hair to see if you were, how non-white you were. If the pencil stuck, you were considered non-white, not allowed to go into certain places. Now, all of that was violent. The maintenance of that was violent. When all was said and done, Nelson Mandela realized that violent reaction was demanded from the people on the ground, demanded from the emancipatory forces, demanded from the 90% black people that comprised the South African population. He was jailed. He went to Algeria first. He went to Ethiopia. He talked to revolutionaries. He talked to Marxists. He came back to Africa. He was immediately South Africa. He was jailed. Time and time again, the government demanded that he denounce the violence. He said, how can I talk to you on equal conditions when I am chained? How can you put my freedom as a talking point, as a way to get me to denounce violence when you have made no efforts you've made no conciliatory efforts. You've made no efforts in understanding the position of people that you have subjugated, that you have forced to exist in these apartheid conditions. At the end of the day, nobody remembers the violence of the ANC forces, because the violence of the apartheid regime was all too great, was significant, was more significant than the violence that the horrifying violence, even those that, of course, civilians were subjected to. Because if I were to ask you today, what's worse, the violence towards the civilians in apartheid South Africa or the violence of the apartheid regime, you would say the violence of the apartheid regime, right?
I don't know. Did they mass murder 1,500 civilians?
I don't know the exact civilian casualties, but in Algeria, no, they did some brutal stuff. Yeah.
Apartheid? So
yes.
Hold up, how many? Well, I mean, not that it fucking matters.
No, but like, yeah, exactly. But the conversation is important to analyze from that perspective, because people that are forced into a corner that see no other way out are going to do this, and and if you don't make any concessions, if you treat the secular Palestinian Authority like they're garbage and then use them as a part of your security, your surveillance state, and have them be seen as collaborators with the Israeli government that is currently imprisoning and defending the settlers, like you said, the fundamentalist religious freaks in the West Bank, then of course Palestinians that are going to be like, well, what the fuck? Well, this is our two-state solution. This is our peaceful coexistence. That like we're losing our homes. We're getting bullied in our own neighborhoods. We have dudes from Brooklyn and Long Island coming in and being like, this is my house now. Like, if you see that as your peaceful coexistence as a pathway forward, you are inevitably radicalizing people to react to that in more and more violent ways. And that is entirely in the hands of the Israeli government to scale back, regardless of how Israeli people feel about the matter, whether they are understandably paranoid and understandably scared or not. I mean, remember, the first Intifada was rocks. The second one was bombs, like suicide vests and suicide bombs in public transit. It has escalated throughout years as the Israeli occupation has gotten worse and worse. And this is a reality that even former Israeli officials recognize and reckon with and ask for change on. You know what I mean?
100%. Dude, I understand everything you're saying.
Like, people forget, like, in the 90s, there was at least some form of freedom of travel between Israel proper, West Bank, and Gaza. There were no, the border walls and the freedom of movement, freedom of travel was not stopped. It was not restricted. And
In the
look where we're at
90s
now. What's up?
In the 90s, I feel like there were a lot more talks of peace that seemed actually close. Like, it didn't seem that impossible back then, from what I remember.
Yeah, and then what happened? The one dude, the one dude who was like, okay, guys, look, I'm a Zionist. I think that we should, at the very least, maintain the security of the Israeli state in a reasonable way. We have to fucking reason with these guys. He was called a pussy and then assassinated. And the dudes that literally wanted him assassinated are now in positions of power.
Yeah, it's
and they have been voted for. They've been voted into office over and over and over and over again.
Okay, so just to be clear, these fringe right freaks are like they've been getting more support, but like the reason they're in power, they don't usually get a lot of support in the parliament. Netanyahu was forced into some really fucked up psychotic coalitions with fringe freak, genocidal maniacs.
Yeah, that's the latest government that he put together just to stay in power.
It's worth mentioning that it doesn't have wide support amongst Israelis.
Yeah, but even look, and there is a member in the Knesset that immediately after immediately after October 7th came out and was like, this is directly the responsibility of the government and the occupation. This is why people are retaliating. And he was right. So I'm not saying that there aren't voices. It's just that the voices are deafened. The voices are additionally deafened when any kind of retaliatory action is immediately weaponized. It's expected and weaponized to make the Israeli population become even more reactionary and demand more blood.
Let me just ask you this then, and the analogy I gave you, okay, just to get a direct answer, where as the terrorist attacks are happening, there's people calling, saying, my neighbors are being shot by terrorists right now, and there's people saying, go Palestine. Are they talking about Palestinian freedom, or are they encouraging Hamas to kill Israelis?
I don't know what people are. I don't know what their demands are.
It's not unreasonable for me to assume that.
No, it's not unreasonable for you.
And I mean, listen, I think.
And if you're Palestinian, for the record, I'll take it one step further. Look, you talked about the paranoia that Israelis feel towards Palestinians or Hamas, right? And I will say this as well. I think that if you are Palestinian and it is understandable that they see this as an emancipatory action. It doesn't have to be right, and it's not right, but it does not matter, because for them, this is the first time that they have seen they've seen like they've seen the security apparatus fall apart. That they've seen the barriers that were designed, that were constructed around Gaza, get bulldozed.
Dude, I got no problem with them breaking through the borders. Like and doing some kind of shit. Maybe I do have a problem, but let's say
what kind of shit though?
They attacked a military outpost. They attacked settlers. I'm not saying I'm okay with it, but like this is more acceptable. But like going and roaming through a kibbutz and murdering families is like I just don't think there's any room for exceptions there.
No,
there's a big difference. You know what I mean? I understand and I know you do. I'm just explaining for myself.
Yes,
here.
civilian targets are never seen as appropriate. That is 100%.
And it was just
that is literally the rule. That's the rule. Is that like civilian targets are not appropriate.
And again, Israel kills civilians, right?
Yeah.
Not saying that. I know they do. It's like, it's not even debated, at least in serious people who are trying to have a serious conversation about it. And so it seems a little obtuse, though, to look at an activist during a terrorist slaughter saying, let's go Palestine. and not say like, yeah, they're probably cheering on Hamas to kill Palestinians?
I think that whoever people are cheering on is ultimately inconsequential, because the actions of the state and the actions of our state, the actions of all Western states,
come on.
is significantly more important.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like,
I'm just again,
and I find it to be unproductive, and I also think it's ridiculous. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think it's fucking ridiculous that the indifference that people have to human casualties is gross, and it's never more perfectly demonstrated by people being like, oh, the BLM Chicago account that is like not even affiliated with the organization, even though I don't even like the official BLM organization anyway, is posting a photo, right? And then immediately people are like, look, this is how BLM is, like, you know, see, you guys have to immediately apologize. Everyone who was like been associated with BLM has to apologize for this random fucking Instagram account. That is politics. People are using the deaths of Israelis and the deaths of Palestinians to do domestic politics, and I think that's fucking ridiculous. And I also think, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, that a part of the do you condemn the violence, do you condemn the violence, do you condemn the violence rhetoric is I think cynically applied to every single person that wants to talk about ending this conflict, even if it's talking about ending the conflict from the perspective of like Israeli security, where the Harvard Student Organization that got together and said the violence that Israel experienced today is squarely the consequence of the brutal occupation. They said that in the United States of America, the Harvard Students Organization. There's plenty of Jewish Americans that are involved in writing that. What happened? Every single psychopathic VC hedge fund dipshit said, these people need to be punished. Give us their names. And they got their names. They did Canary Mission style psychopathic doxing on students for saying what? For saying exactly the same thing that the Haaretz editorial board wrote, word for word, bar for bar. The Israeli paper of record.
I'll say this.
And the Harvard Students Association had an identical perspective. And what happened in America? They got doxxed. There are on the campus right now.
Again,
there are literally their photos are being posted.
I read the letter. It was not that bad. People are going crazy and way overreacting about it. If people are mad about that, it's probably because of the timing.
But there's no timing placed on another a group of people's emancipation. There's no like
Bro, stop.
my
Their timing matters.
No,
Let's not be obtuse about this. It's just this one point I'm trying to make. You can't cheer on Hamas, dude.
I do. Well, Ethan, I said, you know what I said, on the day of the occupation.
I know you don't, but like we're being a little silly. Like if somebody says go fucking
the only difference
Palestine
between what I said
while people are being murdered, like that's pro Hamas. That's what it is. You're helping. You know what I mean? That's what it is. And I understand all the little subtext.
But what's the distinction? But what's the distinction between what the Harvard students said, what I said, what many Israelis also said as well, versus like what you perceive other people were saying when you don't know the fuller picture of like their perspective?
First of all, I don't have a problem with what they said.
Okay, you don't.
And I'm curious about how soon after this massacre it was released, because and we can look into
what's
this.
the barrier of acceptability, though? Or is it that you know me personally and you know what my opinion is, which is why
what did you say?
You can understand.
You didn't say anything like you did not say like free Palestine or some shit after murderers were happening.
I said that resistance to apartheid is always imperfect and there are casualties everywhere, which means there are casualties on the Israeli side and there are going to be casualties on the Palestinian side.
Statement, Hassan.
Yes, that is ultimately the same as saying free Palestine. It is, because my goal is to free Palestine.
I know what you mean, but it's not. It's not the same, bro.
Here's the thing.
What you're saying is, and again, people, don't be silly about this. I'm talking about the timing. as civilians are being murdered, as the story's developing, people saying this, okay, that's an important distinction. Like, your take about, like, listen, Gazans are under apartheid, they're being genocided and all this, which is all true.
And that is what's causing this violent retaliation.
And it's what's causing this retaliation, yes, which is all true. I'm sorry, but it's not the fucking same as saying, let's go Palestine as bodies are hitting the floor. It's not the same.
No, I understand.
And frankly, I think people are in the
distinction.
Thank you. And I think
people are not being careful.
And I think people are justified in looking at that and thinking like, oh, okay, this person's happy that Israeli citizens are dying. Like what? Like, I'm sorry, but that's a defensible position to take.
No, Ethan, you're expanding on Free Palestine in that moment to I'm glad that Israelis are being murdered. The jump there
Bro.
is, no, let me explain.
Go ahead.
The jump there is literally you knowing what I represent and who I am versus you not knowing. You want to know why? Because you think when I said that, people didn't misconstrue my statements. My name is Hassan. I am the America Deserved 9/11 guy. If you think that the very same forces, the very same people that despise what I had to say about blowback and 9/11 did not have the exact same opinion that you have over
I don't know what other
others.
people thought about what you said. Okay, I know that I thought it was a much more respectful, empathic take. And I doubt. And when did you do that? As bodies were hitting the floor, son? When did you tweet out your statement about it?
It was for the next 2 days, Palestinian forces were still deep embedded inside of Israeli proper positions in southern towns. So there were still people dying.
So how about this as a separation?
What?
When people are calling in the news and talking about their neighbors and children being murdered in front of them is not the time.
Okay. Except,
it should be kind of obvious. I'm sorry.
I understand.
You
but
just can't do that. I'm sorry. It's
gross. I get what you're saying, except, you as someone who recognizes the violence of the occupation, know that this, by the very same metrics, saying I stand with Israel implies that you stand with Israel's genocidal conduct, right?
Well,
and therefore,
well, it does kind of seem like that. That is what it says.
Okay.
I disagree with people saying that.
Fair. So
if Israel's bombing Gaza, and people are saying I stand,
not just bombing Gaza, Israel's apartheid regime and occupation is endless. It might be sidelined, it might be silent, it might be the constant, but that is still violent.
If Israel is bombing Gaza. Okay.
Non-Israelis just bombing Gaza.
Dude, let me...
Okay.
I heard you.
Go on. Sorry. I have to pee so bad.
If you leave, I win.
It's over. I'm holding it.
If Israel IDF is bombing Gaza and, and you're seeing the media that I saw, or even not seeing the media I saw, because that civilians are getting... injured or killed, and you say I support Israel in that moment, then I do think you are supporting the IDF and the Israeli regime's fucking apartheid violence.
Okay. Do you think that there is the same energy and same condemnation, even remotely the same condemnation and energy for those who say I stand with Israel, all the way from Justin Bieber using a photo of destroyed Gaza?
Wait, hold on, let me pull that
to
up.
be like praying for Israel.
Where is that?
What are you praying for, bro? Israel to stop? Like, what's going on? What are you praying for?
That was one of the craziest things I've seen. He posted a picture of Gaza being basically a whole street block being leveled by Israeli bombs.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And it says, "I'm praying for Israel."
Yeah, he was praying for Israel to stop. Jamie Lee Curtis posting photos. Jamie Lee Curtis posting a photo of children in Gaza looking up at the sky as Israel is bombing them and going, "I stand with Israel." Israeli flag. Like the and so many other examples. Charlie Kirk showing photos of the Israeli occupying force entering West Bank homes and posting that video and going, look at what the Hamas terrorists are doing. Or so
Yeah,
many
it's
other
insane.
examples
There's
of
so much dumb,
so many examples of
stupid propaganda.
Palestinian children, babies in cages that the Israeli occupying force put them in, that people are posting and going, look what the Hamas is doing. Look at this cruelty.
Yeah,
how cruel, how unusual.
I've
That is
seen
the
it all.
constant.
It's all crazy. It's all
Yes.
psychotic propaganda.
I don't even blame
Super
them.
cynical, fucked up things.
No, it's not. It's not even cynical.
Well,
Ethan,
no, the people who create the propaganda are
yes,
cynical. Not
It's not even cynical though. I don't even fucking blame them because yes, there is an asymmetry to this violence, and you have been willingly or you have completely been shut out
Yeah.
from one side of that of the recipients of said violence, and therefore you simply do not know. You don't know what the reality is, and by God, there is a lot more examples pre-October 7. There's a lot more examples of like Israeli brutality and Israeli cruelty upon Palestinians. So you're inevitably going to accidentally post shit like that.
The thing is, like, with all this nuance and background and history, you still, if we're being serious about peace, you still you can't look at an Israeli, who is traumatized by what happened, in context of everything you've said, which I all agree with, and say, yes, but, it's horrible, or like, yes, but, it's like I'm just saying on a human level, in the real world, you can't do that. You can't, you have to just give them their grief. You have to give them you have to grant them. I mean, they made them victims on that day. Those people anyway.
Yeah.
And so,
do you feel like
when you're having a conversation with Israelis and Israelis are looking to the outside world, I'm saying I agree with everything you're saying, but if you're trying to communicate your condolences for grief or something like that, you don't say, yes, but.
I think people should be more careful.
I understand why you do.
I think people should be more careful, and I think people should be more open-minded. I agree.
I understand why you do it, Hassan.
What?
I'm just talking about in the real world.
Yeah.
When you're talking to an Israeli it comes from the Israeli perspective. Here's a fucking hard truth that I don't know if people will accept it or not. Listen, if you're born in Gaza, you're going to hate Israel 100%. If you're born in Israel, you're probably going to hate Hamas and maybe Palestinians. I don't know. I don't think most Israelis do, but Hamas for sure. Okay. And so it doesn't even, the human experience is constant. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're born on. You're going to believe, you're going to fucking identify with whatever world experience you're going under.
I don't disagree with you. We've already established this. So now I ask you this. I genuinely, the major point of contention that you and I have in this process is I think it is frivolous and I think it is unproductive to find numerous people that may or may not have even openly condemned Hamas time and time again and be like, you're bad, you're wrong for saying this. Like, sure, they're wrong, but that doesn't change the reality on the ground.
I don't think it's fair to characterize it as like a few rogue tweets. I mean,
because ultimately,
this was a lot of people.
No, I get it, but
Yeah.
people tweeting whatever the fuck, right, does not stop bombs from falling. People tweeting
Israeli
did not stop
perspective,
more.
bro. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but the Israeli perspective, if tomorrow the Israeli perspective shifted and was like, 85% of the fucking Israeli population currently thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu is the reason why 2,000 Israelis died. 85% of the Israeli population right now, according to the Jerusalem Post, in the latest
and let's all
polling
fucking remember that when talking about Israelis.
Yes. So some of them, though, obviously think they should be more brutal. Some of them think that Benjamin Netanyahu's occupation, or a much smaller percentage, think that the occupation is responsible for this violence. Now, having said that, do they have a say? Can they unseat Benjamin Netanyahu? Is he going to jail? No, of course not.
He's being tried, actually.
And well, exactly, which is why he built a coalition with fucking Ben Gvir and all the other far right freaks.
He was actually being tried for fraud or some crazy shit.
Yeah, even more far right freaks. And many people are calling for his resignation. He is not going to do that. It's not going to happen.
86%,
even if he resigns, think about it this way.
Hold on, 86% said that the attack from Gaza is a failure of leadership.
Yeah, 86. Yeah, that's what I said.
And by the way,
you did.
This is just
that's like everybody.
This is Jewish citizens, so this isn't even including obviously the Arab Israelis.
And people who watch this show know when we do polls and it's 86%, that's basically everybody.
Yes, exactly, 100%. Like, who the fuck is dick riding Netanyahu in that point? Because like, from either angle, even if you think like Palestinians should be ethnically cleansed, or you think Palestinians should the occupation should end for the security purposes of Israeli citizens, it doesn't matter. You're still going to arrive at that conclusion that it is Benjamin Netanyahu's fault, because the power player in this situation is what matters. The power player in this situation is entirely responsible. The situation, for example, in Afghanistan, with the Taliban's numbers not withering away, but instead growing in popularity during the American occupation, is a perfect example of what happened, and is a perfect example of what's constant with occupying forces and with their violent means of subjugating, humiliating, and murdering the population. You fucking kill... who was it? Even that, I forget who this was, but I remember someone saying like, look, in 2014 or in 2004, time and time again, whenever bombing campaigns occur and people die and children die, you know, their relatives are still alive. The ones that are still alive are going to go, well, I know who fucking bombed me. I know who fucking killed my family. I know who fucking dropped bombs on my house. I'm not going to forget that. That is at the heart of the matter, and a real reconciliation with that means completely going back on 75 years of brutal occupation and policies that were deemed necessary at the time for Israeli security, that absolutely was just a cynical way to justify taking more and more land from Palestinians who had no say, who have never had a say in the conversation, and still to this day have no say. I mean, seriously, the resilience of Palestinian people all around the world, the 5 million displaced, 2 million living in Gaza, and another 2.5 million living in the West Bank is unimaginable. They've never had allies. They've always had imperfect allies and allegiances with people that are just simply only interested in destabilizing Israel. Like, I don't think Iran
just fucking wants to use them as a puppet.
I don't think Iran gives a shit about like Palestinians being free.
Dude.
I think it's very cynical, and they have nothing. They have nothing. They've never had anything. There is no equivalence here between the well-oiled military machine of the Israeli army that has gotten $264 billion in American taxpayer dollars to continue its operations. It's just not. There's an asymmetry to the violence, and there's also an asymmetry to the conversation where Palestinians like living in fucking Gaza are being called by the BBC, and while bombs are being dropped on their fucking heads, the BBC anchor is like callously being like, "Do you condemn the Hamas violence?"
And by the way, that's fucking stupid.
It's like fucking insane, and they never.
And I don't want people to conflate what I'm saying with BBC asking someone in Gaza taking bombs if they support Hamas.
So here's the thing: I've never, ever in my entire life, ever seen a couple things. I've never seen the American government, the State Department, ever say this was a provoked act of violence from Palestinians. I've never seen that. They always say it's unprovoked because it is supposed to be, that violence is like, they act like that violence was in a vacuum. And I know you agree with me on this. I don't think you disagree with me on this at all. They never say this was a provoked act of violence, okay? That is by design. And I've never seen somebody bring up an Israeli official, okay, to television when Gaza is being bombed and being reduced to rubble, or even when Gaza is not being bombed and the brutal occupation still remains, and been forced to condemn the violent actions of the Israeli government. I've never seen that. I've never heard that. I've never seen that. And I don't think that that will ever happen, because at the end of the day, America wants a military base in the Middle East. America wants a destabilizing force that they see in the Middle East. America wants to keep selling weapons. America still wants conflict. The Western world still wants conflict, and they use Israel to that end, and they will continue doing this in 35 different states in the United States of America, where all of these like free speech, supposedly First Amendment defending states. It is illegal to ask to boycott and ask to make divestments and to ask to sanction the state of Israel. It is illegal. You cannot hold a position as a school teacher without signing a fucking thing that says, I will never participate in the peaceful demand that you want to boycott, divest, or put sanctions on the state of Israel. What?
What countries is that in?
In the United States of America, 35 states.
Oh, 35 states.
37 as of now, I believe, but 35 as of 2021. Think about that.
Nuts. Yeah,
and the AIPAC wrote that legislation. They helped push it. They wrote the legislation. There is no comparison.
And by the way, conservative support for Israel is about as cynical as it gets.
Absolutely.
Their whole worldview is that the Jews are guarding Israel until Jesus comes back.
Yes.
And when he does, he's going to kill all the Jews.
Yes. It is a suicide cult. It is a suicide cult. The assumption that like from the river to the sea, the chosen sons and daughters of God will maintain Israel, and therefore Jesus Christ will come down and defeat Shaitan and Megiddo, is a psychotic, suicidal cult. Yet that is the reason why not American Jews, but evangelical Christians, evangelical Protestants are the number one defenders of the Israeli occupation. They are the ones who push for it. They're the ones who fucking fund the psychopathic settlers that you pointed out.
Yeah.
That they are the ones who open up 501c3s so that they can get tax-deductible donations. Yeah, no, I think, yes, of course, Christians play a gigantic role in this. I mean, it was the fucking British that propped up Zionist brigades. Yes,
I mean,
this still
in a
goes
way,
back to England.
I mean, in a way, though, it is like,
it all comes back to the Brits.
It's like,
doesn't it?
if you're coming out of World War II at the Holocaust and you're being offered land by Britain and you're
Hold on, your camera's out.
I'm gonna go pee. I'm gonna go pee while you're gone. Oh no, now I'm censored.
I'm fucking winning this argument.
I'm not taking a pause to pee.
Well, they can hear me, right?
Yeah. Your camera just
So I was. So anyway, I'll continue my point as you guys work it out. I was saying that, coming out of the Holocaust, you can hardly blame people who are offered land in their historic religious, most important religious spot by the British, are hardly going to say no to that. Like, it's just, again, the human experience. What group of people would have said, nah, that's not cool?
Right. And then important to note that those same British simultaneously also promised the Arabs in Palestine a state there.
Yeah.
They were literally offering conflicting offers to two different groups of people.
So
good work,
like,
guys.
again, when people, I do think when people try to reduce this conflict as something that's not simple, it's something that's so easy to understand, I don't think is entirely fair. I really don't. Like, the war crimes, the murder, all the shit that's happening is obvious and easy and easy to point to Israel. But if you're talking about like the establishment of Israel, the long feuds over the land going back 75 years, where, again, as Dan was saying, the British went to the Jews after the Holocaust and said, you guys want to live in Jerusalem? And they're like, fuck yeah. And then
To be
What,
fair,
to the
they were
Palestinians?
lobbying for it for a long time too. They wanted that.
Okay.
But they
Well, they got the green light.
right. They got the green light. But yeah,
And by all the United Nations, or whatever, the League of Nations, whatever the fuck or I don't know. It was UN.
it was and in fact,
Yeah, it was
had
League
been a
of
long time.
Nations.
Originally, it was the League of Nations, but no, it was the UN had just been established after World War II, which is what set up the state. And when I was doing kind of a deep dive on all of this history in the past week, I was shocked to see. I guess I maybe knew this at one point, but the USSR was in support of it too. One of the very few times that
Ooh, you want to know who
the United
else?
States and the USSR were on board with each other.
You want to know who else is a big time supporter too? China. China
Right.
is a major ally and a major trade
Really?
partner to Israel. Yes,
Oh,
abso-fucking-lutely.
that's what RFK Jr. was talking about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the COVID doesn't affect the Jews
Well,
and
no,
the Chinese.
but yeah, no, it's not. So remember that when people in the chat will say like, oh, you fucking major defender of China. No, I think that China is also not exactly a fucking equal party here, or one that is advocating for reasonable solutions. I think that there is a reason why they are not saying anything. They're not coming out with like big declarations as they normally would in an effort to be like, look at America being fucking imperialist again or whatever.
But just to finish my point when you were in the
Go ahead.
bathroom is that I think it's unfairly reductive to say it's not complicated. You know, going back to the establishment of Israel, the duplicity of the English, going back to the skirmishes and there's been atrocities on both sides from the beginning. Okay. Obviously, Israel has continued to take more and more as they've enjoyed the benefit of funding and support from the international community. But to write it off as like the Israelis are just genocidal is unfairly reductive.
I don't think that Israelis are genocidal, even though there are certainly Israelis that are genocidal. There are Americans that are genocidal.
Palestinians are genocidal.
Like,
Just saying, there's people who are. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure, but
there are. Everybody has genocidal mania.
I think that like.
Am I not? Is that bother
Hamas
you?
is 1988. No.
Does that bother you that I
no,
said?
of course,
okay.
of course there are. But the reason why I think it's like laughable is because like, which direction is the genocide happening?
Bro,
You know what I mean? Like it's usually I don't think. I think that you have moral clarity overall, which is why this is a much more charitable conversation. But I think plenty of people do not have that moral clarity. And when they are using the condemn Hamas line, it's not necessarily to get your perspective. It's to deflect away from you talking about Palestinian emancipation and all of the wrongs that they.
Even though everything you're saying is right.
Yeah.
To diminish this idea that there are Palestinians, terrorists mostly. I'm not saying all Palestinians. I don't think most Palestinians even support Hamas. That saying that Palestinians who want genocide of Jews isn't relevant because, again, it affects the Israeli paranoia. It affects the Jewish paranoia, the paranoia psyche, the Israeli psyche. So, like, even though it's absurd, you say that's silly because the Israelis are doing the genocide, still fucking feeds into the pathology of what it means to be an Israeli.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but ultimately, getting swept away in demanding condemnations over and over again is entirely unproductive and also not reflective of the reality of the American population's attitudes towards the defense of Israel and
I don't think that's a fair
occupation.
I don't think that's a fair assessment of what I'm asking.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
No, you're saying.
But like there is
the expectation of constant condemnation of Palestinians against Hamas is not what I'm advocating for.
If you want,
just to be totally clear, because I know people think that about me.
If you want to talk about, like, if right now you want to talk about Palestinian emancipation, whether you are Jewish or whether you are Arab, whether you are Muslim, it does not matter. If you talk about Palestinian emancipation at any point during this endless occupation and senseless brutality, you are immediately met with condemn Hamas. Why do you love Hamas? Why do you want to
Not
believe?
support that. That's a different
No,
thing.
I know,
feel.
but that
okay, I
is-
just want to make that
but
clear.
You and I having this back and forth.
I just want to make it clear because people think that's what I think, and I want to make it clear that what I'm saying is different entirely to expecting everyone to constantly condemn Hamas. That's not what I think people need to do.
What you have. You have a different perspective on the matter that is not widely shared in the Western world. And that is no better demonstrated by the actions that people are taking against the fucking Harvard Students Association versus like what the Israeli paper of records perspective is, which is identical to said Harvard
the
Students
sad
Association.
part about what you said is that you say Westerners don't agree with that, and you're right. But a lot of Israelis do. And that's fucked up. That people, you know what I mean? Because that's not what people see.
Okay.
Even though
now that we've established that do you understand that what I mean when I say there's a double standard with the callous indifference that people demonstrate to the death toll over and over again? I mean, we're talking about dudes that literally Benjamin Netanyahu, when in 2008, people living under brutal occupation in the world's largest open-air prison in Gaza, where 2 million people live, and 47% of that population is under the age of 14 and under, okay? Where their water, electricity, like you also pointed out, is controlled by Israel. They did a peaceful march, a demonstration for a right to return. Thousands of children, babies, and adults alike were ruthlessly shot at by Israeli snipers in that right to return as they walked and demonstrated and walked towards that fence, okay? Walked towards that border fence that traps them inside of Gaza. Thousands. While that was happening, if you had seen, or maybe you weren't paying attention, maybe you didn't see this, the media coverage of the matter was some of the most disgusting I have ever seen. While that was happening, the Trump administration was pushing to further annex Jerusalem and offer it in its entirety and recognize it as Israeli, which is, of course, a major point of contention and has never been allowed by the international authority, completely unjustifiable, inhumane, immoral. Okay? So on the one hand, the Trump administration alongside the Israeli government were celebrating this action. On the other hand, on the other side of Israel proper, you had babies being fucking slaughtered, medics, press, journalists.
There's a double standard.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, hold on. This is really important. This is really important to understand. Okay? If you demonstrate peacefully and get slaughtered, and then Benjamin Netanyahu goes on television and says, callously, these are telegenically dead children. Palestinians have telegenically dead children. If former Israeli ambassadors are going on TV and saying Hamas is using these babies as meat shields, that somehow Israel is like RoboCop or this like force that simply cannot stop itself from butchering, slaughtering fucking Gazans, and it's always in the hands of Hamas. And that is the constant position in both American media, and it is reflected in polling over and over again, where more than 50% of Americans side with Israel on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and only 9% of Americans actually side with Palestinians on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, constantly going back and forth about like what the DSA-affiliated organization doing like a Free Palestine demonstration or whatever in the aftermath of October 7 and saying that feels like you're in defense of Hamas, sweaty, is unproductive, and it also doesn't even reflect anything. It doesn't reflect the reality. We know that in the Western world, Palestinians have no...
it's like, it's emotional. You can't blame people for seeing that and getting upset.
But if you recognize that, then you recognize when you see a sea of I stand with Israel. I stand with Israel. Israel must ethnically cleanse Gaza.
I do
varying degrees of people saying that.
I always have.
Then how are Muslims in America that have lived in a massive surveillance state post 9/11? How are Muslims in the Western world who are constantly treated like fucking dogs, who literally are used as a political pawn, even though their homes have been destabilized by America's unjustifiable post 9/11 actions in the form of the war on terror? How are they supposed to think, oh, well, I guess everybody wants us fucking dead. I guess everybody wants the Palestinians to die. Everyone thinks that this is the normal position. Everyone thinks this is the constant position. Like, of course, they are going to look at that and think the exact same things that you're saying Israelis are feeling, the exact paranoia that Israelis are feeling. And quite frankly, if we look at the asymmetry of violence, if we look at the displacements, if we look at the subjugation, the brutal colonial occupation of not only Palestinians, but many other Muslim countries that have also been ruthlessly occupied and slaughtered by Western coalition forces, it is perfectly understandable and well within the right of Muslims to look at that and be understandably paranoid, and not necessarily paranoid thinking that, you know, you are going to have Hamas forces do a second Holocaust in Israel, when the exact opposite is happening to Palestinians right now. Do you disagree?
No.
Okay. All right. That's why I think it's unproductive that a lot of, not you, but like especially so many liberals in America are like, oh man, the optics of this look really bad. And also, you know, Palestinians really fucked up their chances of emancipation. It's like, you have to be oblivious to the reality, and I know you're not, but others have to be oblivious to the reality of the Palestinian existence to make such callous takes, to be like, oh, well, optics sweaty. No, the optics in that situation just imply
it does
that
matter. Optics do matter.
I know optics matter, but optics don't matter because optics matter in general, but optics do not matter when we talk about the plight of Palestinians, because there's not a single person that is out there defending them in the Western world, whether it be elected officials or whether it be people in the media. And those who choose to do that, those who choose to stand up and say, no, Palestinians deserve emancipation. I'm not saying you're not one of these people, but those who do stand up and say that, okay, they get immediately cast as a terrorism defender. And I saw the spiritual consequences of that in a post 9/11 America. We are still living in the rubbles of post 9/11 America, and its attitude towards Muslims and its attitude towards Islam in general. And oh man, it does seem like this is somehow even worse than that, because I guess it didn't impact Americans directly, so they can be even more bloodthirsty without any fear that there could be violent retaliation.
Right. I think we both have said our piece on this, and maybe we can move on to another topic now, because there is other stuff I want to talk
Ben
about.
Shapiro got mad at me.
I didn't actually watch that yet.
Yeah.
Are we going to get to the Taylor Swift film soon?
Hold on, there is stuff.
Oh,
there,
okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
This great March of Return is fucking crazy, though. Just reading about this. Fucking 100 and... What does it say?
Are you talking about 2018 March, the freedom, the right to return?
I'm just reading about it. 40 kids, 190 Palestinians were killed.
You know what the IDF,
protests.
you know what the
Thousands were
IDF official
injured.
account posted and then deleted? Shouts out to B'Tselem one more time. Wonderful organization. Okay, wonderful Israeli organization, by the way. They captured it before IDF deleted it, because this shows the indifference.
What did they tweet?
They said every single bullet was accounted for. Here, read out the casualty reports.
It says 190 Palestinians were killed, 40 kids, thousands were injured.
There's videos of IDF snipers filming, like putting their phone like this, propped up against the optics, sniping a child, killing them, hitting them in the head, celebrating that his legs flew up in the air as he was shot, and others around them celebrating.
That's fucking, that's demonic.
So when you see that, when you experience that, and then the American dogs in American media refuse to reckon with that violence and instead turn around and have former Israeli officials say these are, these are Hamas-backed operatives, like the fucking 2-year-old or 4-year-old, the pregnant mother that was shot. These are Hamas operatives that deserve to be fucking killed for peacefully demonstrating. What do you do? What can you do? No one hears you, and you're constantly backed into a corner. You are going to retaliate. That is, of course, going to happen.
And Israel needs to understand that. The Israelis,
and I think some Israelis do.
They need to understand that. And that's,
okay.
It's it's that mutual empathy. Like, Israelis need to understand why Hamas is attacking them. If they can't understand that, then nobody can be helped. I mean, it's just, it's insane to not see their perspective.
The major thing here is that I think this is there's a reason why Israel did not have local media go to the kibbutzes that you were talking about that were slaughtered. They originally went immediately. They said, we're having foreign press come here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was a reason for that. Because they know that internally, the opinion of the Israeli population currently doesn't matter. The Western opinion
I think
matters.
the Israeli opinion on the massacre was pretty unified, dude.
Well, what they say about that is that
Whoa.
they don't. Everybody's already.
Hold on one sec, Hila. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
They're saying everybody is already in such grief and broken that they don't need to show this terrible footage. But
I mean,
they're saying it's important for the world to see what happened, so that's why.
Yeah, they're doing propaganda. It's like, it's not surprising, is it?
Yeah. No, it's not. But I'm just saying that, like, I think that
it did happen.
I think that there is more.
They're not like putting the bodies there and like putting them in fucked up ways.
Of course not.
I'm just saying,
That's not what I'm saying at all.
It's not that cynical to send in the press.
I think that
it's not cynical at all. In that case,
I think that the coverage from certain Israeli outlets on the matter is more critical on the Netanyahu administration, and showing that, I think, and like the interviews that I've seen as well of the parents fucking demanding, basically kicking out Israeli Knesset members that are visiting the hospitals, yelling at them, telling them to fuck off, telling them that this is their fault. I think that, like, there's two different reasons for obviously that level of anger. Some of which say you did this to us by being more brutal, and that this violence, of course, is going to be a constant, and it's going to be a violent retaliation. And then there's also the people that are saying you are not violent enough, right? But ultimately, everyone is critical of the Israeli government at this point from different angles, and I think that's the reason why they care more about the Western media's opinion than anything else, because they don't want to repeat the mistakes that happened last time in both 2018 and also the Shireen Abu Akleh murder, again in the hands of an Israeli sniper that the Israeli government said was actually Palestinians. And Western media immediately disproved that. And then what did the IDF do? What did the IDF do?
I don't know.
When a wonderful voice for good, a Christian woman, a Christian Palestinian, and an American citizen, Shireen Abu Akleh, was murdered as she was on her way to one of these refugee camps. She had a press vest on. She had a press helmet on. She was shot in the neck so that she could be assassinated. Okay? This was a major issue. They wanted to do. Sorry, this is really fucked up. They went to her funeral and beat the shit out of people and ripped the Palestinian flag off of her. Palestinians can't have a moment of peace in this fucking world. They can't even mourn the dead. Sorry. The IDF went in and beat the shit out of the Palestinians that were mourning her at her funeral, that were holding her casket, and ripped the Palestinian flag off of her casket. How is that allowed? How can that continue? How do you not see that? That's in the West Bank. This is a Christian woman. This is not a Muslim. This is not Hamas. This is a journalist that was beloved in the Muslim world. And she was assassinated for speaking out and trying to shine a light on the atrocities. It's hard to look, it's very hard to hold my composure on this. This is something I've talked about for years and years. But when that kind of ruthlessness, sound like fucking Jordan Peterson when he talks about men. Jesus Christ. When that kind of brutality is so normal, so normalized, when that's the everyday existence of Palestinians in the supposed collaborative project with the Israeli government, how can you expect them to do anything but violently retaliate? There's no end in sight for this. And now you have cynical pieces of shit on social media. If you want to talk about social media and people saying stuff on social media, you have cynical liberal commentators that supposedly adorn the politics of radical emancipation saying, oh, how wonderful that Joe Biden is trying to create an exit corridor, a humanitarian corridor for those who are being bombed in Gaza right now to escape through Egypt. That's still ethnic displacement. That is not humanitarian. It is completely unjustifiable. Completely. There is no equivalent. There is no moral equivalence. There is no equivalence whatsoever. And there is no symmetry in the way that this is covered in the Western media. And that is by design. They refuse to show Palestinians as humans. And they have very successfully been able to dehumanize them. There are voices out there. There are voices in Israel. There are voices out there who see it, who see the brutality, who see the endless humiliation that Palestinian people have endured. And I stand with them, and I don't care. I will always stand with them, even if there is a moment of violent retaliation. Okay? They have nothing. They have no allies. They have nothing in the world. And people celebrate their destruction. It's happening right in front of our eyes. There's nothing. There's no equivalent. It is so horrifying that this can happen in the supposed only democracy in the Middle East, the supposed beacon of prosperity, in a sea of barbaric Arabs, right, who do mass rapes and love to behead people. All of these, some of which are true, by the way, I know. All of these are racist canards specifically to heighten the tensions and to justify what Israel is doing in broad daylight in moments that the world even chooses to care about paying attention to what's going on in Gaza. That's why I wanted to make the distinction that what goes on in the West Bank, this is constant. This is every day for Palestinians. Every day. It's crazy. Like, I know it's, you can say like, oh, land back movements are supposed to be violent or whatever, but there's nothing more violent than this. This is the violence. It's just that it's legalized. It is state-backed. So we are not trained to see it as a violent act. That's the difference. It's only violent or it's only terrorism when it's a non-state actor or a foreign adversary that engages in it. And that's why if you look at the United Nations, if you look at British or European authorities that have spoken out, correctly condemned Russian atrocities in Ukraine, you will hear silence when it comes to Israel and what Israel has done and what Israel continues to do to Palestinians. Disgusting. Sorry.
I think I can say I don't know. Seeing this,
It's fine. I'm good.
Seeing this and hearing you talk about it, I do probably feel like I haven't been as empathetic with the Palestinian experience as haven't, you know what I mean? Like, I can fully acknowledge that I haven't been 100% empathetic with that. And that, you know, my perspective is different. Or, I mean, not right, but I'm just saying, like, seeing this and seeing you react makes me feel like, you know, some of the dealings I've had with people on Twitter and stuff is, like, even though I disagree, is probably not empathetic enough towards this perspective. This is really sad.
This is just a very, you know, it's just one example of many. It's every life is important. Like, you know, the Israeli lives are important too. I recognize that. It's just that there's no one out there that will speak out, and those who do are immediately branded as supporters of terrorism. I'm not saying you're doing that, Ethan, but the reality is, when you have the audacity as like a journalist in British media or a journalist in American media to sit across the desk from someone whose family has been murdered and to say, do you condemn the violence of Hamas, when you have never asked an Israeli official if they condemn the ongoing occupation, when you turn a blind eye to it? I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck what like some random person said about land back movements being violent on Twitter. Because one is the entire state. One is the entire media apparatus. The other is some fucking person on Twitter. And I don't know what the full scope of their perspective is, but I can tell you, I know the full scope of the perspective of mainstream media and the fucking dogs in America and the fucking violent dogs in all of the European nations, with the exception of Ireland, that have regularly supplied weapons, turned a blind eye to the atrocities, and still to this day, cynically and in the most disgusting way, declare that any kind of anti-Zionist sentiment, no matter who speaks it, could be Jews, could be Arabs, could be Palestinians, could be Muslims, is anti-Semitism. It's so unimaginable. You have people in England, a woman or a man who had a Palestinian flag was seized by the authorities and was arrested. Now they're talking about possibly declaring the Palestinian flag to be a terrorist flag. That conflation between Hamas and the Palestinians is the policy. That is the policy that is cynically built up, propped up, and defended over and over again, so that when babies are dying in Gaza, when children are being slaughtered in Gaza, when settlers spit on West Bank Palestinians and kill them and don't get punished, and as a matter of fact, the families of said victims get punished, when they're ruthlessly thrown out of their homes, you can still always turn around and justify it by either turning a blind eye to the atrocities or only covering the atrocities when there is any sort of retaliation from Hamas or from the Palestinian side in general. And then, sorry. And then we just say, why won't you condemn the violence? Why won't you condemn the violence? You are supporting Hamas.
Let's I gotta pee.
Okay, I win the argument then.
I'm gonna button out that whole fucking.
The whole last part.
Yeah, the whole last part.
Okay.
No, I feel like I definitely understand where you're coming from. Like, I mean, I 1000% understand where you're coming from, and I do think I can acknowledge, like I touched on before, that I am capable of being more empathetic with their experience.
And I think you are more empathetic by an incredibly wide margin in comparison to the average American. Even though there, of course, and this does not reflect American Jewish people in general. American Jews are at the forefront of demanding the end to the occupation. The Jewish Voice for Peace, if not now, is another organization. There are wonderful friends of mine that are regularly writing about this in very thoughtful ways, and have never ceased their coverage. It's you know, it's so shitty. It's so sad. I don't know what else to say about it. Look, there was another point I wanted to make, but now I'm forgetting it.
Let's do this. Let's enjoy this video, and then I'm gonna go pee, and then we'll move on to another topic.
Okay.
Here, we never got to watch this. This is the mashup of us having a fake conversation with each other. Yeah.
5% of their targets were civilians, okay?
Did you not just see that they killed 700 people?
But it doesn't matter because they're not a fucking real military. They're disorganized. And of course, there were people who did some fucked up ass shit, and civilians died as a consequence of that too.
It's war. Innocent people die. All right, so let's bring the Iraqis out. Iraqi terrorist groups to your neighborhood. And see if you care. People murder everyone you love.
Of course they did that. And that is completely fucked up.
There's like a cut while you're talking.
They do a really well. I think they do a decent job of like at least interlacing your audio, so it actually does seem like I'm responding.
I don't know. It seems so far fetched, but people are believing it. Pretty interesting.
This is wild.
Yeah, it's wild.
When immediately after,
but like, how fucking cynical is this, man? To create this,
people are saying, "I support Palestine," and what they don't mean Palestine, they mean
the
Hamas.
targets that they fucking killed, they're military. That's according to the Israeli numbers.
Even more than Israelis, perhaps, deserve to be burned alive by terrorists.
Like, bro, do you know what life is like? Have you read a book? Have you like watched anything that isn't like pure Zionist copium propaganda?
In fact, why don't you just make it easier? Why don't you just fly to ISIS and do them a favor and just let them, just serve yourself on a platter?
Why is Israel so violent? Why do they not actually scale it back a little bit?
Freaks. Bloodthirsty,
I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, that's
yeah.
totally justifiable.
They come to your neighborhood
that happens.
and they just start burning people alive, killing people, kidnapping kids,
absolutely insane.
Desecrating bodies.
I am much more interested in how that happened.
It's pretty fucking, props, I guess.
Like, if they had done it as a joke, it'd be one thing, but to try and trick people.
I remember what I was going to say. Okay, this is not about anything here, but it's neither here nor there. But, like, you didn't know about the 2018 numbers, right? The march the march to return.
No.
So you didn't know about that. You didn't know about Shireen Abu Akleh, and you are, despite not knowing any of that, and these are just some of the hundreds of examples. There's a reason why you don't know, even though you are empathetic and to the Palestinian plight. Okay, there's a reason why you don't know, though. And I think that deserves examination. Why have you never heard of this? Do you want to know why? Because it will never get the same level of coverage that the Israeli retaliation and the justification for it gets.
To be fair, I haven't really been paying attention to the news until like very recently. But
there's a lot of Americans.
But I'm not disagreeing with you. Just trying to defend my own ignorance.
No, I know. It's just, I hope that people that are faced with this reality have a more empathetic approach, rather than turn around and say they deserved it and you deserve it too because you're a supporter of terrorism. You're not doing that, of course. There are those who know about it and yet still push this line, though. But I am a firm believer that if the media was a little bit less interested in manufacturing consent and creating a justification in the minds of Americans for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, that more people would most likely say, this is unacceptable, completely and utterly unacceptable.
All right, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I want to do all of this, so it might take a while if you're okay with that.
It's fine.
But I think I think that we're having a good thing happening here, so.
Yeah, we're solving it.
I want to keep it going. I mean, yeah, so I'll be right back. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. Hassan, turn off his mic, please.
Yeah. I apologize for being emotional. I
definitely don't need to apologize.
This has been a long past 3-4 days.
Absolutely.
There are certain stories that everyone holds on to. You know, there's always a moment that is a radicalizing moment for many others. Like I said, Gabor Mate talked about his Palestinian friends who could not return to their homes when any Jewish person can just go and live in that house, whereas those in the West Bank that have left are, by state policy, not allowed to return. I think that was his radicalizing moment. I don't know. It's really sad. And we didn't even talk about the Canary mission. I want Ethan's perspective on that, especially because there are so many organizations that operate within American boundaries inside of the United States of America that do not have the fucking smoke for Nazis and fascists and anti-Semites, that only have that smoke for random Palestinian nurses, teachers, and students. These are organizations that work to dox and threaten those who have been in support of Palestinians, and we just turn a blind eye to that completely. Most people don't know about it, though, and I think that's the reason why they turn a blind eye to it. I think it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's completely ridiculous. Same with the boycott, divestments, and sanctions movement, which was incredibly important in demanding the end of the apartheid in South Africa. I think that the American government has learned its lesson from that former example and has moved very swiftly and very efficiently to make it virtually impossible to coexist or have a job and keep a job while simultaneously holding the position that you can defend Palestinians and demand a boycott, divestment, and sanctions from the state of Israel.
Do you know why it is that that, like, I have to imagine that those laws that are on the books in 35 states about making it illegal to support BDS have been challenged by some groups on First Amendment grounds. Like, how has that not gone to the Supreme Court yet, or has it? Has there been a ruling on that? It just seems so blatantly not.
It's been challenged in one. I think Abby Martin was one of the people that challenged it in one, but ultimately it still exists in, like I said, in a lot of states.
35 is most, yeah. It just, I don't know. I guess I don't know what the status of any fights over that is, but it just seems so on its face unconstitutional. I'm shocked that so many states have been able to pass that.
Jerusalem Post posted this today over this stupid fucking debate, but they said the Jerusalem Post can now confirm on verified photos of the bodies that reports of babies being burnt and decapitated in Hamas's assault on Kfar Aza, the kibbutz, are correct. And
that was such a, God.
There was a lot of fucking people being like, for some reason, they're like, Hamas would never do that.
I don't.
They
think
would
people
only
are-
slaughter 1,500 people. They would only shoot a baby with an AK-47, as if that's not more as
No,
brutal.
I said this yesterday. I talked about this quite a bit. I think that the coverage of this has been ridiculous. Like the fact that, first of all, the fact that it was not verified until now is insane to me, and the fact that it got all the way to the president, who said I saw the photos when he had not seen it and just repeated it, is wild. Like, and ultimately, it doesn't matter what method of execution occurred when children were slaughtered, when babies were slaughtered. It literally doesn't matter.
Well, that's why I always thought it was so silly when I would see leftists being like, they didn't rape anyone or decapitate any babies. It's like, I guess they're cool then. I guess they're
only
cool.
shot them.
Yeah, they're cool.
It does.
But they did
does seem
actually.
kind of moot.
No,
but Hamas.
This is why this conversation is frivolous, and I mentioned it time and time again yesterday. That like, okay, the babies were not decapitated,
They were killed,
or they were,
for sure.
but they're still killed.
Yeah.
So it is silly.
Stupid, dumbass.
It's silly to have a back and forth on this. However, the only reason as to why the assessment should be made later down the line on how quickly information that is not verified yet can spread all the way to the highest levels of government, and what that serves, what purpose that serves, that part needs a close examination, especially considering prior instances where, not that it matters. Again,
I mean, it was true.
It is true.
Yeah.
And it was ruthless. And it was brutal.
It is fucking ruthless.
And this is
man.
something
shocking.
that needs to be. This is something that, of course, needs to be considered.
That is. I mean,
reason why
listen.
people were the reason why a lot of people, at least I follow, who have been covering this on the ground inside of Israel, and some inside of Gaza as well, was because of the Kuwait baby incubator situation that occurred in the past, where Amnesty International and the American authorities in the lead up to Operation Desert Storm said that the Iraqi soldiers were taking babies out of their incubators and like tossing them and like killing them, which is like incredibly brutal, right? In that circumstance, that was completely not real. That had not happened at all. And Amnesty International went in and looked at it. And there was even an eyewitness testimony that was offered in Congress that was just a complete falsehood, a complete fabrication, and that played a role in justifying it to Americans that like we have to invade. And I think that's the reason why, because the American government has done this before. I think that's the reason why people thought that this was the exact same situation. However, it wasn't the exact same situation because the baby incubator story was false, whereas babies were still killed in this circumstance. So
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But the truth is, though, that this is not going to help anything. This is going to fuel a lot of bad feelings. This being true.
And here's the thing, right? Like even if those babies weren't beheaded, let's say, right, or they weren't decapitated, whether by gunfire or directly with knives or whatever, which is, I can't believe we're having this conversation. It's so fucking ridiculous. Okay, they still died. It's not like the Israeli government was going to do anything different. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, or it's not like the people that are receiving this information were going to feel differently. Like the goal there is to absolutely demand verification, because you have to do that, because in the fog of war there is so much misinformation that gets presented, and the media should do their fucking jobs 100%. And I do have criticisms on that front, but it's ridiculous to have a constant back and forth on this when nothing will change and nothing's going to bring those children back.
All right, here's what I want to do. I'm going to move on in the interest of fairness, because part of what I want to do today is call out some really fucking nasty shit I've seen. But and because I want to be consistent and do it all around, and these people are just as deserving, if not more, to be called out. I have a compilation of all the really fucked up shit that Western politicians, mostly politicians, some here like this guy. I mean, this is a rally, you know, this is a pro-Israel protest in New York. I mean, just listen to what this guy has to say.
To my dick!
What do you think the response should be from Netanyahu and the military to Gaza?
Kill all Palestinians! All of them! Now,
So, like, that's crazy, obviously. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
The confidence
barbaric.
to just say that on camera.
Yeah.
is
I mean, why would
crazy.
he? Why would
There
he
is
feel?
there is a level of comfort in saying that,
Yeah.
more so than saying
What, kill all Israelis,
Yeah,
kill
right.
all
all
Jews.
Israelis.
Yeah, of course.
there's definitely way more
He's like
acceptable
no
thing to say.
hesitation there, right into the
somehow.
camera.
Yeah.
No mask.
His
The thing
face is there. He's
the
probably
thing
got a
is, why
job.
would
Yeah.
he say that? Is that might be a Kahanis flag? I think too, the one that he's
What
putting
is
up.
that?
one left from the river to the sea.
I can't
Palestine
see.
will be deceased. And Israel need to do like this.
Oh, and then
You
this
see?
whole
No.
shit. Yeah, I've heard this a million times. But
the-
anyway, so that was one.
you
I just
know,
want to blast through these.
The flag that I think he's waving is a Kahanis flag, which is of course the psychopathic terrorist cult
Super far right.
led by the insane Meir Kahan, the rabbi, which Itamar Ben-Gvir is a part of his cult and is a defender of.
Here is Lindsey Graham, the fucking demon.
By the way, that's
himself.
a terrorist organization by American standards. Literally, America has declared that to be a terror organization, as a terrorist organization by Israeli standards as well, and that is the reason why Itamar Ben-Gvir was not allowed to serve in the IDF. So remember that, like, you know, no matter how conservative or no matter how ultra Zionist you might be, even Israeli conservatives are like, that's too far, that's too fucked up. Now that guy runs the police force, and Benjamin Netanyahu gave him a Praetorian Guard, or said it offered him concessions on building out a Praetorian Guard specifically for him.
Netanyahu's going to be remembered like the man. He wanted this legacy of being Israel's protector so bad. He served for what, like 13 years? People are going to spit on his fucking grave, dude. Anyway, here's Lindsey Graham on Fox News, international news, the most popular news show in America, I think.
We're in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level the place. We're in a religious war.
Psychotic.
So, but the first guy that we showed, and what he's saying is also exactly what's going on in Gaza. So that is why I always say there is no equivalence here. Like, there is no
just as much. And
there is no power or no like serious no genuine voice that is channeling this kind of wanton indifference and this kind of like callous celebration of like genociding all Jewish people, which is completely unjustifiable, of course. Like there is no equivalent on the there's no equivalent on the Palestinian side.
You're right.
And it's not represented in the media or reflected in any way at all.
I understand what you're saying. And the crazy thing here is that these people are posting it on their social media. This is Nikki Haley posted this on her YouTube. Lindsey Graham posted that clip. That motherfucker clipped that because he
posted it himself.
Right? He posted that on Twitter.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
It's not just Republicans, by the way. Democrats.
This is the worst I
similar.
found.
Democrats have said similar things as well. I mean, what's his name from the Problem Solvers Caucus? Gottheimer, Josh Gottheimer. They were having a closed door meeting, and he could be heard screaming that, like, you know, all Muslims. What was it? That's a Democrat. Oh, here, I'll show you. I'll read it.
Meanwhile, here, let me play this Nikki Haley video. Message to Netanyahu.
And what we have to understand is this is the reason that we have to unite around making sure our enemies do not hurt our...
I do have to say, also looking at this, it strikes me as a little bit silly that they're showing... Oh, God damn it, it's so fucking slow. That they're showing like a, you know, essentially a hole in the ground as evidence for, you know, the
Leveling the
damage,
city?
the damage that Hamas has done, versus like the shots of Gaza where like literally entire city blocks are demolished. It does strike me as a little fucking goofy.
Sure, our enemies do not hurt our friends. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends, just like we needed them on 9/11. That's why Ukraine needs us when Russia's doing this. That's why Israel needs us when
There's like some playground politics.
That is the most
You need
disgusting.
friends.
That is the most
need
disgusting
friends.
comparison. Like the fact that every fucking Ukrainian official has come out and been like, "Wow, what Palestinians are doing is exactly what the Russians are doing to Ukraine," is so fucking. Oh my god, I don't even want to get into it. Okay, I don't
Let me
even wanna
finish
talk
this
about
video.
that.
Yeah.
Dogs.
Hamas and Iran are doing this. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them. Hamas did this, you know.
I mean, that's fucking crazy. And I mean, the result of this shit, of these terrorist attacks, is basically, you know, the Western world being like, here's your blank check to kill as many fucking Palestinians as you want.
It's so 9/11 again. It's so scary.
This only works when only one side of the conflict gets coverage in the eyes of the American population. They would do this on Fox regardless. It only works because of the insanely Islamophobic sentiment that is just so commonplace since the post 9/11 universe that we exist in. And not only that, but also that's why the conflation of Palestinians and Hamas is one that is by design, because the victims are still the Palestinians, not Hamas. And there is no way to effectively neuter or destroy Hamas with an endless bombing campaign in Gaza. The only way to destroy the influence that Hamas has is by starving it out. And I don't mean literally by starving the entire Gaza Strip. Starving Hamas and ridding it of its influence requires you to treat Palestinians with dignity and offer them equality and follow through on the former promises that the international community has made and turned a blind eye to Israel not following their commitments on.
Fully agree with what you said. Like, again, it's important for everyone to acknowledge that Hamas is the result of, you know, Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. And it's just, you're right. If you, I think it's obvious, but I guess people don't want to confront it, but the obvious solution is to don't give them a reason to turn to terrorists. You know, it's pretty obvious. But there it is. Here's Marco Rubio. There can be no ceasefire, negotiated solutions, or peaceful coexistence with depraved barbarians who murder teenage girls, children, the elderly, and then dump them in the streets of Gaza so bloodthirsty crowds can desecrate their bodies. Hamas must be eradicated, and Israel must respond disproportionately, in all caps, to this and any future attacks from the enemy. I mean, what he's doing here is like the Hamas murderers are 1,000% barbarians who murdered children, teenage girls, which specifically he has a problem with. He goes, who murdered teenage girls? What about teenage boys? We don't care about them? Just like, it's a weird focus. What, right? Anytime,
a little odd.
Anytime you call out teenage girls in any context, I'm going to raise an eyebrow.
Check his hard drive.
He just likes them, you know.
Yeah. By the way,
but to finish my point, he was saying he's conflating Hamas, who are bloodthirsty murderers, to justify killing Palestinians disproportionately. And again, like, I don't know if they, like the videos that I saw that made me emotional before of the Palestinian dad, you know, with his daughter. holding her like this, like she was like gray and fucking dead, like an 8-month-old baby.
Yeah.
Like a beautiful newborn, innocent, beautiful child. Like I don't know if and he's this man. I don't know if Marco Rubio has ever seen anything like that, or if it would change him. But I can't imagine that seeing that would not have an impact on these fucking ghouls to see what they're actually wishing for.
It might not be impactful for Marco Rubio, but it certainly would be impactful for many people who are completely oblivious to what's going on, which is precisely the reason why that never gets any coverage. This isn't to say that like Israeli civilian casualties are acceptable or good. It's just that there is coverage on that endlessly, understandably, and never any coverage on the humanity of Gazans. I've talked about another aspect of this too. We in the Western world live in the comfort of the imperial core, and we live in a comfortable security blanket. So for us, if we live in like Connecticut or Iowa or whatever, of course we empathize significantly more with Israelis that were attacked by this horde of scary Muslims. Like, of course, we empathize with that on a spiritual level because we can't understand the entire building blocks being removed. It is far too alien for us to comprehend the fear and the reality of that kind of devastation. We look at that and we go, oh, this is just like Baghdad, which is an enemy that deserved it in the minds of Americans. So that is also another reason why I think Americans are immediately and unconditionally in support of, the Israeli occupation.
Here's Ben Shapiro. I mean, no surprise here, obviously, but still.
Oh, he's been baying for blood nonstop.
I mean, here's a video. The UN Special Reporter for Human Rights in Palestine. We are horrified by what's happening, and we are calling for a truce. And here's a video of, Gaza being bombed by missiles. And then Ben, in his infinite empathy and human nature, told them that they can fuck right off. And like, this is such, all these people, but looking at Ben, I mean, is such a lack of human empathy. It's like, it's just fucking evil, man. But there it is. That's Benny Boy. And one more, again, no surprises here, but Charlie Kirk.
These people betray principles of Judaism and centuries of Jewish history of always siding with those who have been oppressed, always being at the forefront of social justice and fighting for emancipation for all people. It's really, really, really disgusting to see that. 100%.
I didn't want to read this one. So, basically, showing all these ghouls feeling very comfortable with no pushback, expressing their desire for genocide in Western media. Here is an Israeli. Hold on, who said this? Okay, so here it is in Hebrew. This was from an unnamed defense official. Told Israel's Channel 13 that the Palestinian territory, home to more than 2 million residents, would be reduced to rubble. Quote, Gaza will eventually turn into a city of tents. There will be no buildings. The ground maneuver will surprise Hamas, the official said in a stark warning to the terrorist group behind the weekend assault that killed more than 1,200 Israelis.
I mean, the Israeli defense minister literally said, we're shutting off the electricity, we're shutting off the food supply.
I don't understand
And we're
that.
shutting off the water into Gaza because we're fighting human animals, or a better translation, I think, was beasts. But ultimately, though, that's collective punishment. It is a violation of the Geneva Suggestions. I don't want to call it conventions. This has happened for far too long. You can't attack the press. You can't attack medics. They killed. There was the Red Crescent guy who was crying in his ambulance because he could not. He had seen far too much death and destruction, and a couple hours later, he got bombed. They allowed him to enter a site of the rubble, a site of the bombings, and they bombed him and killed him. Like a couple hours later.
Okay, so
directly just a violation.
At this time, I want to turn my attention to some of the very evil takes I've heard some prominent folks making about Israelis. Here is one such example of a dude, and this guy is very popular. He has 1.6 million subscribers. He is a very popular political YouTuber.
I can't see anything.
Called Second Thought. Sorry, this.
Oh yeah, he's my friend. I like JT.
All right. Well then, you tell me what you think about this. He said, "What's going on in occupied Palestine is unprecedented. No doubt we'll have wall."
Is it on? Wait, hold on. I don't have my glasses today.
It's just the.
I'm not gonna be able to see it. I just had to click on it so I can read it. But go ahead. You can read it out. You can read it out loud.
Here, you know what? Let me show you this.
Is it on the Google Doc?
Let me show you the video first. This will be easier for you. He basically says the same thing here. So here he is doing a podcast.
I've been on. I think is this Deprogram? I've been on the podcast.
I don't know what it's called, but this is just a clip from
Yeah.
So here's his take on this, and let's listen.
And Faisal saying very much. He says, did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news? I don't care.
Yeah, the occupiers are not civilian.
First of all, just straight off the bat,
the person that's talking is Hakim. He is a doctor in Iraq, and of course, just to put this into a decent frame of reference for those who are unfamiliar, I think he will probably have a much more ruthless position on the matter, considering how he feels about American forces and what they've done to his
This
home
I'm pretty sure
family.
is all Second Thought.
No, the one who said...
No, I know. But
Yeah.
Here.
And Faisal saying very much. He says, did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news?
So wait, who's talking there?
That's Hakim.
Okay, so Second Thought's the one who says, "I don't care," and laughs.
I can't, wait, say it.
I don't care.
This
No,
guy.
that's Hakim.
The guy with the accent.
Yeah, that's Hakim. Second Thought is an American.
So Second Thought is the guy who's asking the question.
No, Hakim is the one who read it. He's reading it from chat. It's a super chat.
Did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news? I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he agrees with him. So let's just fucking listen to the clip.
The occupiers
I
are
don't-
not civilians. That is what it comes down to. Like imagine like if
Sorry, go on.
Germany, let's say Germany to be non.
That's him, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Controversial.
And not that it matters.
invaded the United States, and they said, you know what, Cincinnati, Ohio is our ancestral home, and everyone knows that's blatantly false. But they take your home, they murder your grandma, they bulldoze like your neighbor's house. Are those people civilians there? No, they're occupiers, and those are criminals. That is, there are no civilians there. In the
So according to Second Thought, he says that every Israeli is an occupier, and there are no citizens there. In response to decapitating babies, which I can now say.
There are two different schools of thought here. So the first is,
and the take in the comments is based.
Yeah, of course. The 1948ers believe that there's two different schools of thought within, I would say, anti-Zionism. Those who believe that all matter of settlements that were propped up even in the inception of the Israeli nation state are unjustifiable, and that they are settlers. So they extend beyond your perspective that you agree with, which is because West Bank is a settler occupation.
I think it's an extremely evil thing to say, what he said.
Let me ask you this.
No. What do you think? What he said is evil?
I think it is, one, unproductive, and two, it does not meet the realities on the ground, and it's not a viable solution.
So calling, just to be clear, calling babies.
No, of course not.
Settlers.
Of course.
And they're not even living.
They're not.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
they're
So
babies.
I just want to say, I have a question for you. That this guy's a fucking evil piece of shit for saying that.
Can I ask you a question?
Can I finish? Let me finish the
Okay,
video.
we'll finish this, but I do have a question for you, because I think you're going to agree with something I'm about to say.
Yes. Let's just finish it and then we'll talk.
Invaded the United States, and they said, you know what, Cincinnati, Ohio is our ancestral home, and everyone knows that's blatantly false. But they take your home, they murder your grandma, they bulldoze like your neighbor's house. Are those people civilians there? No, they're occupiers, and those are criminals. That is, there are no civilians there in the illegal military occupation.
Yeah. So that's number one.
I mean, that's so callous. It's kind of hard to fucking even believe just how flippant he can be about calling babies militants that are deserving to be killed.
Very beautifully put. Number two, much more importantly, the track record of Palestinians has been 1,000 times better than that of the Israeli occupation, despite the fact that Israeli occupation does not need to brutalize. They already have all the power, but they still choose to do far worse. The worst that will happen to a person in Palestinian custody is that they're going to be like auctioned off for a prisoner swap, which is the historic track record also.
And of course,
he's not wrong about this. This is the original goal for the military, the excursion. At least if you believe.
I'm not exactly having a ton of faith in the dudes that decapitated babies to treating their POWs really well.
Well,
I think that's kind of a psychotic take too, where it's like it's like, why are you trying to give Hamas the benefit of the doubt on this one? You know, being like, oh, they treat their prisoners fucking awesome. You know, let's not try to do that.
Okay. So,
but anyway, and that combined with just the callous, the laughter.
Listen,
hold on.
Did the Palestinians actually take civilian hostage, or is that fake news? I don't care.
Okay.
And they're laughing about it.
Let me pose a question for you.
Go ahead.
So you have said that those in the West Bank are fundamentalist settlers. Are you familiar with the international law surrounding the justifiable forms of violence towards?
So first of all,
terror.
I don't put any stock, frankly, in whatever these quote international laws are.
Yeah, it's.
But no, I'm not familiar with whatever that says.
Technically, the reason why the IDF has to exist in the West Bank and behave in the oppressive manner that they behave is because Palestinians, and this is going to sound very radical and possibly very violent, but this is a matter of law, and maybe even if you agree with this, a matter of morality. Palestinians have the legal ground to violently seize back their own homes from the settlers. This is a reality, and that is precisely the reason why they have to exist under endless occupation in the West Bank.
You know what? And that's why I say, if it was settlers, that would be a lot more understandable. But let's not obfuscate, okay? I understand what you're saying, but this dude just called babies militants.
No, I understand. And there are baby settlers as well. But there are baby settlers as well. There are babies in the settlements.
But the babies that killed were not.
I know.
Okay, so
here's now that we established that. Yeah. No, hold on. Now that we established that, the other school of thought here is that all matter of Israelis living on Israel proper are they're also doing the exact same thing in the eyes of some. I do not agree with that because I don't think that is a reasonable solution, and it's not realistic anyway, and that only will lead to the complete evisceration of Palestinians, and far-right Israelis will use that to continuously radicalize just regular Israeli citizens in their endless bombing campaigns and ethnic cleansing campaigns and the brutal occupation. This is why many thinkers, I believe even including Norm Finkelstein, who has dedicated his entire life to speaking the truth about Israel's occupation, and Noam Chomsky and many others, even Edward Said, as I brought up earlier, believe that the de-Zionification or the displacement of Israelis from Israel proper, Jewish Israelis, is it's not justifiable and it's not realistic. It's more so a single state solution, at least one that I advocate for, because I know a lot of people advocate for a two-state solution. I'm a one-stater, which
Was there a question?
What?
I thought you said I have a question for you at the beginning of that.
I gave you the question. You already answered it. You said I know your position on like violently seizing back your land from settler occupiers.
Yeah, that's not what they did though. And that's
these
who
guys.
he's talking
No, these guys, or at least I assume second thought, has the perspective that all matter of Israel is all matter of Israel proper is considered settler occupation.
And he's evil for thinking that. He is. Right after babies were murdered and decapitated.
All
I
I'm
can say
saying,
that
it's
now.
not 19
Let me read this further.
If he said this in 1949, I'd have a different opinion on the matter.
Let me
you can't
read
say this in 2023. I agree.
Let me read this. Thank you for agreeing. What's going on in occupied Palestine is unprecedented. No doubt we'll have wall-to-wall coverage of atrocities now that it's the genocidal settlers on the receiving end. This is what liberation struggle looks like. Solidarity and victory to the Palestinian people. Again, just to put the timing in frame here, he says, no doubt we'll have wall-to-wall coverage when Israel responds. This is while bodies are still bleeding.
Well, I guess the second part did come true. He wasn't wrong on the second part of that conversation, at least. Okay.
What, solidarity and victory to the which part are we referring to?
Wall-to-wall coverage when Israel responds.
Right, but like, and this is my problem. So as the bodies are fucking still bleeding out, and he's saying this is what liberation struggle looks like: beheading babies, burning families alive, solidarity and victory to the Palestinian people. This is pro-Hamas. This man is supporting Hamas.
I think his position is that people that have been trapped, and I can't speak for him, but you can if you want to talk to him. I'm sure he would be willing to come on and speak his piece. I've already mentioned that I don't find this to be particularly helpful or productive as far as this conversation goes, not because like I am tasked with defending the positions of other people or even criticize them. It's more so that we know what is currently happening. We are now 3-4 days removed from October 7, and we know what the retaliation looked like, and we know what the occupation has looked like every single day.
That was an obvious reaction.
So that's why I'm saying,
again,
that's what I'm saying. Like a
timing matters.
A YouTuber with
hold on, this guy's influential.
No, I know, Ethan, but his influence is nothing in comparison to the multi-billion-dollar media
I
operation.
just want to call this guy out. That's what I want to do.
You can call him out.
I just spent
and you can ask
2.5 hours calling out Israel. So now this guy, second thought, he's supporting Hamas. He is pro-Hamas. That's what
call him out.
Hold on.
Okay.
Solidarity and victory to the Palestinian people. Oops. Again, the timing that I keep mentioning, as bodies are being counted, is pro-Hamas. That's it. That's it. There's no other way to interpret that, and it's evil. He continues, imagine someone comes to your town, murders your neighbors, kicks you out of the home your family lived in for generations, and relocates you. Are those occupiers civilians? No, they're criminals and accomplices in genocide. Once again, referring to babies who were decapitated. At least, but again, that doesn't matter. 40 babies died at this kibbutz. Okay, kids also, children, families. Peaceful kibbutzim. Many of them actually pro-Palestine advocates. He said that they are criminals and accomplices.
Okay, we don't know if they were pro-Palestine advocates. Let's not go that far.
What? That's positive. That's what you think that none of the people killed were.
I mean, I don't know that. I'm saying, like, I don't know why you're adding that. It doesn't even matter because ultimately,
it does matter.
They shouldn't die.
Okay, right.
That's my position.
But it does make it especially ironic when he's calling them accomplices in genocide when their only crime is being born somewhere.
No, I agree with you.
It's evil. I just want to say that.
I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't disagree with you on this at all.
Thank you.
But that's not my. But.
Bro, I'm just calling it out.
Okay.
This guy's a fucking, he's a scumbag.
If you want, you have the opportunity. You can speak to him if you want on this particular issue.
I'll think about it. But
so I don't know why you're.
I'm not demanding you respond, but I simply, as a matter of doing this show, want to call out the people that disgusted me, because again, I hear this all the time. People go, "Oh, really? Well, show me an example."
I know, but
here's one.
No, there are examples of this. It's just entirely and utterly inconsequential, and I 100% stand by that.
It's not. He's an influential man. When you're expressing these kinds of...
Okay, let's walk through that. What do you think is the negative consequence of this? Do you think that people are going to see this and go, "Oh, I should go to a..."
So should I not care about it?
I think that if you look at the reality, and I know you recognize it, a YouTuber saying this kind of thing and spending any time or any effort on this, when your moral position is clear, when mine is clear, spending any time on this whatsoever to be like, we got to clean up our own homes here, deviates from the actual message that must be unflinching. The message is that these violent means of ensuring that the occupation continues is going to inevitably lead to more violence that Israelis will be subjected to as well.
Normalizing murdering civilians.
He has no capacity to do so.
And the result of that,
I think a better argument would be that it's anti-Semitic. You could say that, well, not what he's saying, but that it could lead to people listening to what he's saying and then think that all Jews are responsible.
Okay,
and
so
think
it's
that
consequential. The stuff that he's saying matters.
That would
But my point is, if I can finish my point, is that this guy who proposes to be this Palestinian advocate, he is encouraging the murder of civilians, babies, etc., in an effort to free the occupation.
I don't think he's encouraging it. I think he's justifying it.
No. No, he says, hold on. No, he says this is what liberation struggle looks like. What's the liberation struggle about murdering families? But I wanted to say this. This guy who purports to care so much about Palestine, his advocating for killing civilians, the result of that is going to be basically what's happening in Gaza now, which is that Israel, which is, again, genocidal, violent, psychopathic people in power are, it's like the result of this is Netanyahu gets more power and consolidates when people already fucking hated him. The international community that was giving a lot of general support for Palestine and Gaza and all that.
No,
there was a lot of I know you're going to debate me. There was a lot of sentiment, especially in Europe, for being like, "Yo, we need to, we need to look at this Palestine."
Entire planet. The entire planet has regularly condemned the illegal occupation time and time again. You know who has said "fuck off" to that? The United States of America and Israel, and sometimes Ukraine. So. It does not matter what the condemnation even looks like. It doesn't change anything. Palestinians...
Let me finish my point.
Okay, go ahead. Finish your point.
The point is that the result of this, these people are pro-Palestine. The result of this is literally the opposite of any possible intended consequence, which is Netanyahu gets more power internationally and domestically when people already fucking hated him and his government. The Western countries are basically backing up Israel's genocide and encouraging it and sanctioning it. The Gazans are now being bombed. Their food, power, water is being shut off, although that happens regardless at times.
Always.
But so
if the argument here is that if Second Thought had not tweeted this, or if other YouTubers and other people on Twitter had not tweeted their celebrations, that do we think that the world's perspective would be different on Israel's bombing campaign currently? If you think that, legitimately, if not a single person had tweeted this, do you think that the situation on the ground would be different?
Does it matter to you that this might be anti-Semitic?
Oh, wait, what do you mean?
Well, you're saying you're treating this as if it doesn't matter at all, and that's
I don't think it matters at all.
And you're not Israeli.
Yeah, I don't think it matters at all in the grand scheme of things whatsoever.
So you're saying
because the question I
hold on. Your point.
Answer my question,
Go ahead.
please. Let's say JT and Hakeem or any number of different Twitter users had not been so callous in their indifference for civilian casualties in this situation. Not a single person had tweeted anything. do you think that there would be more support for Palestinians?
Obviously not, but listen to
So
what
why
I'm
are we
saying,
having this
bro.
conversation then?
He's influencing people. He's not. Is this tweet going to change what's happening on the ground? No.
No, of course
But these opinions being broadcast by respected people in politics is going to contribute to fucking more violence. He is.
In what regard?
Because people
like, do
who
you think
sympathize
Palestinians
with him are gonna be like, yeah. I mean, he's basically.
Do you think Palestinians are going to see JT's
no, the
tweets?
acceptance of people, and that's fucking anti-Semitism, bro.
The acceptance of what people?
The acceptance of people internationally who look at this guy saying, "Let's fucking kill all the Israelis because they're all occupiers."
I don't agree with that take. That he's making.
I'm being hyperbolic. But it's not that far from what he said. I mean, he's called every Israeli an accomplice in genocide and an occupier.
It's like freaking out. It's like freaking out when the Iranian leadership like fucking burns an American flag or whatever and be like, they hate us. They're going to come for us. They're going to kill all of us. Like there is no conversation to be had here that is like serious because,
bro, I just disagree. I mean, you were telling me today how much influence I have. Why does it not matter that people use this?
The
kind
influence
of
you
language?
have is upon your
man has
fan
influence.
base. The influence you have
And
upon
that
your
doesn't matter?
The influence you have upon your fan base was specifically in regards to okay. Let me dial it back real quick and explain something. This is a basic fundamental that I believe in. I believe that our culture and our attitudes are entirely reflected on the material realities on the ground, that our material realities guide our culture and our attitude towards certain things. I don't believe that you can move the needle in the other direction. I don't believe that you can tweet a revolution. As a matter of fact, many people laugh at hashtag activism and whatnot, but I do think that it goes in the opposite direction. I do think that you can't, make a super sweet YouTube video that ends up destroying the white supremacist court structure in the United States of America. However, I do believe that if you go in the other direction and promote more of the state-sponsored violence, you absolutely can motivate people to feel more justified and demand more from their governments.
Which is what he's doing,
do this.
right?
So if and only if there was a real, legitimate, well-established military machine that was capable of going and fucking killing every single Israeli citizen, like you said, he is justifying for, this would be as damaging as the average Israeli defense of the Israeli occupying force. Only then.
I just find it odd
And
that you
even
have
then,
to do the
and
whole
even
what about
then,
thing about this.
But Ethan, even then, there is no comparison because guess what? What he is saying as a singular YouTuber is represented by our elected leaders, is represented in the reality on the ground in the way that Israel is continuing its occupation and its bombing campaign in Gaza, which is why I think it is utterly and entirely a distraction to have assessments, to make assessments over.
Listen, I'm sorry that I care about it. I guess I'm just an emotional fucking idiot.
I'm not saying that at all. I perfectly understand why you care about it.
But it's important to me.
I understand why you care about it.
I disagree with that premise.
I think you should have him on to
clearly
ask
you
him.
disagree with
I think you should
his
have him
premise.
on to ask him. Because I personally disagree with this assessment.
Yeah.
And I think it's unhelpful and unproductive overall.
Yeah. Okay.
But
we agree. But I think he's evil.
But
He's
I
a
also
scumbag.
will point once again that what he's saying here is the Israeli policy in the other direction. It has been the reality in the other direction.
Which is not good.
I know you don't agree with that, but I'm saying because you don't agree with that, it is.
This is the main problem I'm having with all this stuff.
I know that's the main problem you have with all this stuff, and that's why I'm trying to say it's not even remotely a point of contention, and it's not even remotely equivalent, and it's not even remotely.
I don't think people should be
to have this conversation.
This guy's way too comfortable just going out there publicly and being applauded.
What do you think is the solution here? What should be done with him for saying that?
What criticism doesn't stand on its own? Why do I need to be punitive?
No, you said you're upset. I mean, I think you're well within your right to be
criticizing.
critical.
I'm criticizing. I'm not asking for.
I think you're well within your right to be critical of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, though, I will reaffirm my position that if he was saying this about Palestinians instead of Israelis, that would not only be not condemned at all by a singular person, that would be the specific policy position of the entirety of the Western world.
Israelis and the Western world are monsters, then we shouldn't care when the opposite people are monsters, because it
not
doesn't
necessarily.
matter. Well,
I think because
seems like what you're
I think
arguing.
no, that's not what I'm saying, because I don't agree with what he's saying regardless.
But
however,
why does it matter then?
However,
if we're just taking this comment and I just want to point it out for the evil it is, like why does it? I just don't understand the
told
need
you this
for
already. Any issue to be taken up with Westerners and the optics of like what they are saying should be talked about with respect to the impact that those words will have. Which is why I said, if you think that this is genuinely going to be impactful, then that's another conversation to have.
I think it matters. Man, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. But anyway, clearly you don't agree, and that's just my opinion on the guy.
I do not agree with his assessment. Yes.
And so let's see. Moving on to, I mean, we've talked about.
But I think you would agree with his assessment if he was talking about settlers in the West Bank, though, right?
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say that,
kill babies in the West Bank. Of course, you wouldn't say that.
But like theoretically, I don't think settlers are civilians.
They're not.
But
they
he's
are not
talking about
recognized
all
as
Israeli-
civilians by international law. They
talking
are
about all
technically
Israelis.
considered terrorists.
That's an important
I agree.
distinction that he's not making.
The distinction that he is making is that he's talking like it's 1952. You know what I mean? That's the difference. And it's not 1952. You can't make this assessment.
Thank you. We were talking about, let's see. Man, this video's sick, dude. Again, I know you're going to say this is just like a small rally that happened, but there is a certain level of comfort. I mean, this doesn't seem like a small rally, frankly. There's a lot of people out here, and they're just out there. And here's the speech that one of the organizers has to say about the Hamas. Oh, you haven't seen this?
I can't see. Well, first of all, I can't see anything because I don't have my fucking goddamn glasses. I forgot.
I full screen it.
But also, secondly, I mean, I don't know what the fuck this is going to be.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazed. But listen to what this guy has to say.
Broke through the fence. They put the F-35 on.
What is he saying?
You'll hear it. It's a little fuzzy right now. Here.
And as you might have seen, there was some sort of rave or desert party where they were having a great time until the resistance came in electrified hang gliders and took at least several dozen hipsters. But I'm sure they're doing very fine despite what the New York Post says. But nobody had seen this coming. Every Israeli official said it was a complete surprise. And I think we have to sit with that, because as of just a couple days ago, they said that surprise wasn't possible. They said we control every inch of Palestine.
No, they don't!
They said we have walls, we have cameras, yes, we have traitors too, and there's nothing they can do that we won't see of what we do. They were so arrogant. But just less than 24 hours ago on the land, from the sea, and from the air, the people of the Gaza Strip our people from Gaza, our young people are riding their bikes through these settlements where they were told they could never go because of apartheid. Our farmers, the farmers of Gaza, you know, they say that they can't even have tractors. They say that's terrorist equipment. Well, unfortunately for them, the tractors of these various so-called kibbutz settlements have been liberated and taken back to the farms.
I mean, that's insane, right?
I don't even. Yeah. Okay. Like.
Okay.
I'm
just criticizing people. You don't have to comment if you're not comfortable about it.
Okay. I mean, I have no.
I mean, he was just like, I don't like this shit.
Okay.
It bothers me.
I understand why. I understand
He
why you
goes,
don't like
the
it.
electrified hang gliding heroes flew in and killed a bunch of hipsters partying. They were having so much fun at the party till these fucking heroes showed up and mass murdered everyone. Oh, and we liberated the kibbutz, by the way. Everyone's cheering. We liberated the kibbutz, a.k.a. beheading babies.
I will once again present to you the same exact question. If this rally was not held and if he had not said those things that I do not agree with, do you think that there would be a difference in the analysis and the way that Palestinian people are treated? Do you think that there would be a difference in the bombing campaign that's going on? Or do you think that this is, once again, the violent sentiment of those who are siding with the oppressed that is ultimately utterly and entirely inconsequential?
I'll tell you this.
Because
I know
all
that's
this
fucking
does,
evil.
all this does.
I know that.
All this does,
and I have no problem to say it.
All this does is to serve a singular purpose, and that purpose I do not believe you are on board with. But that purpose is cynical. When people go, look at these guys, they're all violent. That is, by design, what mainstream media in America is doing when they constantly, exclusively cover the Palestinian side.
That's not what I've done
specifically
here
about
today.
like these guys. I know you're not doing
I've just spent 2.5 hours talking about.
Even I know.
So I just want to listen. I
know
just
you're
want to
not
say
doing
this
that.
guy's evil. He is. He's a evil dude. There's just, you know what I mean? Like, fuck this guy and fuck all these people. That's just not it, man. Once again, this is right after. This is right after it all happened.
Yes.
And we're talking about the hang gliding heroes. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's sick, and I think it needs to be called out. I don't think it's good to normalize this kind of shit.
We should keep calling it out. We should only call this out, which is what many are doing. Whenever there's any mention of, I know
We're
you're
talking
not.
about us.
I know you're not.
Yeah.
But this is why I'm like, there's not.
I'm calling both out.
There's not a single outlet that ever legitimately shows
I don't belong to those networks.
the ongoing and never-ending plight of
Bro,
Palestinians.
I'm just trying to
only
call
talk
out
about
both
Palestinian activists
sides.
like this. They show these pieces of footage and go, look how violent these guys are. Look how violent the left is overall. These guys are all leftists. Look at them. They're leftists. They love terror. They love terrorism. And we are talking about this in a country where like there is no, like the guy you brought up, JT, okay, who I disagree with on that front. He has had the Department of Homeland Security visit his home for his for a YouTube video that he wrote. No, not for that. It was a YouTube video that you would agree with if you watched it. It was about the Department of Homeland Security in and of itself. I believe it was something about CIA. Like there is no real legitimate, genuine, and continued support for Palestinians, and there is no legitimate, real, and continued leftist momentum happening.
Excuse me.
Especially one that is like associated with any kind of tangible move on the ground. So that is why it is, frivolous to have this endless back and forth that already is happening all over mainstream media. There's no, especially in America, they don't bring up like Mohammed al-Kurd, whose home was violently seized. They don't have him on to talk about these issues. They just go, look at these crazy leftists.
I don't think. Listen. I don't think a 30. I don't mean this. I don't think this monologuing is essential to calling this guy evil. That's all.
All right. Are there more wrongs committed by Americans who are speaking on Palestine that we can go through? I'm down to go through more of it if you have more.
This is a massive rally in Sydney, Australia. And again, we bring up the issue of like it's inconsequential. Well, according to this massive rally outside the Sydney Opera House, they're not making a distinction between Israelis and Jews, actually. I'll play it for you. Guess the Jews. cetera, et cetera.
This is the out of everything that you've shown me, this is demonstrably the worst. Like, because this has genuine impact on the ground in whatever nation that we're talking about. That is unequivocally and uncritically anti-Semitic, completely indefensible. No additions to that
Can I
whatsoever.
ask you a question then?
What?
Let's say that one of this...
And that does lead to, I think, furthering anti-Semitic, and it not only is it unproductive, but that does, I think, lead to a real and tangible impact on the ground.
So let me ask you this.
What's up?
A fan of Second Thought who's listened to him dehumanizing Israelis that way, do you think that listening to him might inspire one of those people to be like, hey, I'm going to go join this,
What, Hamas?
Well, no, I mean, it's a according to it's a pro-Palestine.
You think a fan of Second Thought's going to see? Okay, let's walk through it. You think a fan of Second Thought's going to see that and be like, I'm going to go to Gaza. I'm going to join Hamas.
That's not what I said. I said he's going to go down to the Upper Sydney at this location and be like, hey, yeah, fuck, let's gas the Jews. Everyone's saying it. Nobody seems to care.
I guess it could happen. Certainly.
Okay.
But once again, I mean, this is fucking gross, by the way, 100%. It's just ridiculous. It's disgusting. What I was going to say is, I'm still thinking about a Second Thought YouTube fan being like, I'm going to go rise up in the global jihad and rise up against Israel and purge it.
I understand that.
May Allah guide my weapons.
I understand you think it's silly.
I do.
But again,
I'm
responding to your point about how none of this matters. And I disagree with that premise. I do.
Yeah, that guy.
This is how I'm picturing.
He's like, it's time to do a jihad against Israel and all the Jews.
You're not, yeah, but that wasn't my point.
No,
He's just going to join the rally.
Let's be serious. Let's be serious. You're right. I think that conflations, no matter who's doing it, of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are very dangerous. And I think that saying anti-Semitism is like fuck the Jews when you're talking specifically at a anti-Israel rally or a pro-Palestine rally is really fucked up, completely unacceptable. And I don't know what else to say about it other than of course I condemn that. That is, I mean, there's always people that try to sneak in little anti-Semitic shit in my chat all the goddamn time. Whenever I'm talking about these stuff, they're like, ooh, why do you think the American media turns a blind eye to this? Maybe because they own it. And I'm like, okay, motherfucker, Jews don't own the media, wasps do, okay? So shut the fuck up. Like, there is always going to be people that try to take advantage of these sorts of things. And ultimately, the reality on the ground is unchanging, and the opinion of our governments are unchanging on what do you call it? The way that we turn a blind eye to one side of the atrocities and also completely justify the reaction that the state engages in. But yes, I do think that could lead to. I do think that is anti-Semitic, and that will lead to anti-Semitic sentiment spreading. It is completely unacceptable, and it should never be normalized. And it should be fought against.
That's all I'm trying to do, man.
That is not what that is not what being a defender of Palestine is about.
Right.
It is not about being a defender of the emancipation of all people is about. It's completely ridiculous.
And so here, this is one more. This happened in Brighton in England. I'll just play it real fast. Another rally.
There's gonna be. It's like that dude who like. There's some random fucking guy who Googled swastika and like pointed it at
I'm not showing that one because that one's silly. It's just
no, I know, but my point is this, right? There are always in every fucking in every kind of protest, there are going to be charlatans, clowns. What matters is not necessarily like the BLM protesters that are saying fucking kill all white people. When you find them in a fucking BLM protest, what matters is like the actual action that the state is taking. So that's why I never, for even a singular moment, am ever going to hear the calls of like the ethnic cleansing from like random Kahanis on the ground celebrating Israel's actions against Gaza and be like, wow, this is truly important, because I know that their opinion on the matter is inconsequential.
It's not like this is true,
but it's also policy.
I'm not making like a mountain out of it. I'm just saying that it's fucking gross. And I mean, do you deny that there's at least, there are a lot of people that believe this shit. There are.
Of course, anti-Semitism is certainly a major issue.
And I think it's important to make a good effort to separate the issues.
Yes, I do agree with you, and I do that all the time. But like I said, the reason why I look at this and consider it to be utterly unproductive is because having random charlatans and people who have violent opinions.
Yeah, I mean, these are well-attended rallies.
But I know.
Yeah, and organizers.
But this does not reflect upon, again, the situation on the ground. It does not reflect on people who are defending.
You know what? I'll say this. I agree.
Okay.
I agree with you.
So
we don't even need to argue about it. I agree.
I have to pee again. God damn it.
Right. I'm getting too defensive. I agree with you.
And I don't know why I'm like, why I have to, I don't know why I'm going through each individual protest to be like, this is bad.
Well,
this is bad.
Right. Well, we just did it with the,
what?
With the, the genocidal monsters who are calling for the death of,
Yeah, we glanced through it, and my point there wasn't necessarily to be like, this is the opinion of these guys and their moving policy. I know that their opinion doesn't matter because the policy is already set. The policy reflects what they're saying. I even told you they're comfortable saying those things because there's no punishment that I even expect them to withstand for those statements, because I don't care about their statements. I don't care about the public opinion in that regard. I care more about the actions of governments and what the media is doing. And I think everything that you've shown me thus far is subject to a role reversal that literally is the reality. A role reversal that is actually demonstrably what the media is pumping out.
That's what I agree with, and I've shown both sides, and I just don't understand the insistence that it just doesn't matter because the other side is doing it. It's like, I don't know, man. Here, I mean this.
For me, yesterday was a victory. As a Palestinian, yesterday was a victory. For freedom fighters in Gaza to break out of a 15-year blockade so successfully under the inhumane genocide from Israel was so beautiful and inspiring to see. It shows us as Palestinians, and it shows the world and us from Palestinians that we will always fight and we will always resist, and we need to celebrate these acts of resistance because this is a success.
Yeah, and again, this
like is so she's saying this is an act of resistance. This is like it's happening while this is like on October 7th or October 8th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a displaced Palestinian woman.
Yeah. So she said the mass murder of civilians is inspiring and beautiful. She said that.
Okay.
And then she also said,
didn't you originally maintain the position that like, yeah, displaced Palestinians are going to have they're going to say things that in the heat of the moment are impassioned and oftentimes not empathetic to the civilian casualties on the other side? I mean, it's just. That's what
the
you're
point is
watching.
that people see this stuff and it matters. Especially, you know who it really matters to is
What?
like, you know, the demons that fucking want to actually kill the Palestinians because this is like the perfect, you know, ammunition.
Well, don't you feel like you're also serving their purpose then when you endlessly talk about the
First of all, not endlessly talking.
not endlessly,
Three
but like
videos.
showing this and like parading all of this. I think that
Well, first of all, it's a political show. We're talking about all this stuff.
I agree.
And you know, I'm just showing what I've seen that bothers me.
I understand.
Does it help the conservative apparatus? I don't think me watching this now. These videos are all super viral. I didn't dig this out and put it out into the
No,
world.
I know. You know why they're super viral? Because of the things that you
it's
mentioned.
shocking.
Yes. No, the reason why they're super viral is because you're right. It does help present all Palestinians.
I think it's
and
super viral
all
'cause
of
it's
those
shocking.
who are demanding emancipation for Palestinians in a negative light by appealing to the understandable human emotions of saying like these are dead babies. You reflect that and you
Beautiful,
show
inspiring.
you're celebrating dead babies. You think that that's a revolutionary act. It's gross and it's disgusting.
Okay.
Right? So that's the major reason as to why these videos get played all the fucking time, and the role reversal of said videos is reflected as current existing policy in both the United States and also in Israel.
I think
it's so much so that they don't even show in America Israelis who are literally pushing back against the administration and say that the violence is caused directly by the Israeli administration's positions. Like, that's how fucking bloodthirsty we are here in the Western world. It is like the condemnations only work in one direction, and I have done it over and over and over again, and I will continue to do so if presented with this kind of thing. But the reason why I think this is an unserious or frivolous conversation to be had is because of rallies being conducted, ultimately not yielding any sort of serious results in general, and certainly not on behalf of Palestinians. If you look at the 75 years of brutal occupation.
Right.
Like, and I don't think Palestinians on the ground give a shit either, for the record. Like, they don't, like, this is not going to, if this footage did not exist.
It is going
if this
viral because
rally-
it is shocking, though.
Yes, if this rally did not exist, like, would one singular baby not be obliterated in the Gaza Strip? No. So I don't have I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Or if more, if more
stuff
rallies
matters,
existed on the other side of people, because there's tons
stuff matters,
there's tons
man.
of counter
It does.
protesters.
I disagree. I disagree.
Like, the first footage that you showed were literally counter protesters of a rally where people were talking
Which
about
one? The guy-
solidarity with Palestine. Remember the
guy-
Kahanas guy who was like, obliterate all the Jews that we move past, because I think it's frivolous and inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, because the American government is going to do what it's going to do, and Israel is going to do what it's going to do, regardless of whatever people fucking say on the ground. And that the overarching consensus view on the Palestinian front, due to things like this being highlighted and not necessarily the voice of activists who do not say things like this, is already entirely and deliberately on behalf of like all Palestinians being terrorists. It's just, this is why I say it's unproductive, because there is no one who is being promoted in mainstream media as like a good voice for Palestinian people, and those who do actually say, I condemn the violence, but here is the reality of why this violence occurred.
They weren't all Palestinians that I showed, but listen.
No, I know. But
I understand.
But you understand what I'm saying,
Yeah, I do.
right? Like,
I do.
this is a deliberate way in which you look at.
But I also think that this stuff,
person or different rallies, and you cast a negative light on the entire Palestinian liberation movement.
That's
not
why it
saying you're
matters.
doing that.
That's why it matters. Like, this
I know, but
stuff
it's like,
all matters.
It's optics. It's an optics conversation, and in the grand scheme of things, having an optics conversation about like, oh, I can't believe they said this. Look at how violent they are, while simultaneously, well,
I'm not they. This, you know what I mean? Like, I know what you're saying.
Okay, how
but it feels
violent
personal
these
'cause we're
specific
having a
individuals
conversation about
are, but like, at a certain point, this doesn't serve any other purpose than, what Ben Shapiro would do, to be like, look at how violent they are. And that is the mechanism of manufacturing consent working in unison. Yes, there are people that say condemnable shit. This does not change my mind on Palestinian emancipation, and it should not change your mind.
No.
If you're watching at home, I know it doesn't change your mind
But it probably does have an influence on people being more hateful, more dehumanizing to Israelis, and in some extreme cases, anti-Semitic.
Ethan, when you see a video, you're in support of Black Lives Matter.
She says we need to celebrate these acts of resistance.
You're in support of Black Lives Matter, right? You're in support of Black Lives Matter as a movement in general. You are. I know you are.
Okay.
I mean, come on. When you see videos when right-wingers in America present videos of Black Lives Matter supporters and activists and even leaders saying, that cop died and it was good that cop died. And they show that and go, look at the situation. These guys are all violent. They all want to fucking kill cops. They all want to kill white people. They show wanton and callous indifference to the death of whites in general. When they show footage like that, does that change your perspective? Do you also think...
Not mine, but maybe some's.
Okay, it changes some people's perspectives. Do you think that those videos or the weaponization of those videos is what serves a purpose in changing people's minds, in propagandizing them against Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, it's part of why it matters.
No, do you think it's the singular act itself, or is it the propagandizing of and the weaponization of those videos that serve a purpose in creating anti BLM sentiment?
I don't think it's BLM. You're talking about different situations. I don't even know.
What do you mean?
I don't know if it's comparable. I mean, we're talking
Palestinian
about
emancipation.
I mean, they're like, hold on.
And
BLM, we're talking about like riots. We're talking about like breaking into buildings. In Israel, we're talking about murdering 1,500 people, decapitating babies, burning families alive. That she called beautiful. We need to celebrate. So the severity of it is not the same.
Okay. Black Lives Matter is an emancipatory movement to stop the disproportionate killing and targeting and stop the disproportionate killing and targeting of black people in the hands of the police. Right? Under a white supremacist criminal justice system, these issues have gone unnoticed for far too long. Palestinian liberation is identical as far as the struggle goes, which is extended beyond the treatment of black people under a white supremacist police force, but literally is a legalized apartheid structure. Okay? So these are both emancipatory causes. Do you think that when people bring up random footage of like Black Lives Matter activists, or even the Hamas thing, the BLM, the BLM Chicago account that's like unaffiliated with anything, posting a photo of the Hamas parachuters, right, and saying this is Palestinian emancipation. Do you think that when people do that, they're doing that because they genuinely think like, oh, we need to clean up our message here? Us BLM supporters, we need to clean up our message here.
I think it's more about like influencing not just the people who are there, but also the people who constantly see this kind of language and think that that's the language of like of the resistance, or this is the way that we should be talking about this.
Okay. So the more positive situation in that regard, if you were faced with that, if you were faced with someone showing you this kind of footage, and you as a supporter of Black Lives Matter, you would say, yeah, this is silly, this is ridiculous, right? Like, yeah, it's bad, but also this is not what is reflective of the actual modus operandi of the movement in and of itself, and their cause is just.
I think, I don't know if we're getting lost in the woods a little bit, because I agree with you in that it's not an accurate representation of like the people as a whole. It just bothered me, and I wanted to call it out.
Okay, but you understand why like it can be, not saying you're doing this, but it can be used to effectively propagandize and neuter any kind of emancipatory movement.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're not doing this because you do, I think, I know you are empathetic to Palestinians and their plight. However, many people in the media that are significantly more powerful and more influential than you and I combined times 10 are doing exactly what you just showed me, showing footage of this round the clock, and effectively radicalizing people against the Palestinians and the Palestinian position when an endless bombing campaign has currently taken the lives of more than 500 children, more than 500 children in Gaza. This is why I find this conversation to be utterly and entirely unproductive, especially because we are an independent media outlet in comparison to the sea of mainstream media conversations that are being had on exactly this issue. I understand where you're coming from when you are afraid, as a Jew in America, about the possible anti-Semitic, the rise in anti-Semitism. Of course, your co-host, myself, and many other people I love are we are seen as Muslim regardless of what our position is, and Islamophobia is also ever present. So I am sympathetic to your fears on multiple different avenues. However, this is why I think it's a conversation that's being had all over the media. I don't know why we spend any additional time on it here, because it does have a intentional or unintentional way of casting a negative light on the emancipatory struggle of Palestinians, especially in the West.
Right, but I mean, it still is happening though. So like, should we not show it because it makes them look bad?
I think it's fine to show it and say this. I think it's unacceptable, and I think optically speaking, this is not something that should happen. But also do
basically what you're saying.
But also do it in the framework of like recognizing the overwhelming amount of media in the opposite direction that is the regular everyday
just to be
media
clear,
coverage.
We did spend the first 2.5 hours doing just that.
No, I know. I know. But we talked more so about the real issues on the ground in the first 2.5 hours. Now we're talking about the optics. Yeah. Now we're talking about the optics and how certain things are received in the West. And if we're going to have a conversation about like media narratives or how certain things are received in the West and optics, then that's an entirely different conversation that is devoid of
all right. Listen, I see what you're saying.
What's going on the ground.
I think yet again, we're basically in agreement. There's one more thing. I know this is fucking insane. This is the longest episode ever. It's already 3.5 hours, so thank you for staying.
Half the crew's left.
Are you serious?
I'm exaggerating.
I didn't even
Some people had to go.
Yeah. There's one more thing that, as is a dual citizen Israeli, as someone who knows a lot of Israelis, and by the way, knows all the horrible things that the IDF does. After I saw you say this, I was quite shocked because I hadn't heard that. And in my research, looking for it,
I have to pee.
Go ahead, I'll wait for you.
Can you play that?
No, well, I'll wait for you because I want you to see it. Go ahead, I'll wait. I'll talk to Dan.
Hey, what's up? Can we talk about the Taylor Swift movie yet? Because we're 3.5 hours in. I feel like we're running out of time. We're not going to get to it.
Oh, it's a movie.
It's a lot more than just a movie. You're underselling.
Are you kidding me?
Did you not read the write-up I sent you last night?
It's an experience of a lifetime.
Eras.
I sent you a 13-page document that I spent all night on this morning, and you didn't even look at it, did you?
Is it in IMAX 4D?
God, I'm not answering that for you. You do your own.
Read it.
You
now
figure
you're
it
really
out.
Screwed.
I'm so upset.
Why aren't we talking about the important things? Kidding.
Do you think that it is in IMAX 4D though?
Of course.
You can feel her
I
spit.
damn hope so.
The 4D experience. Oh God. Can while we're waiting for Son to come back, can I just play this banger Trump?
Yeah.
Totally unrelated
Good
to
idea.
anything.
Good idea.
Doesn't have anything to do with Israel, but very important nonetheless.
And I'm glad it's such because this is the worst microphone
Quiet.
I think I've ever
let me turn it.
I hope you can hear me back there.
Oh, you couldn't hear it. See, his
And I'm glad
microphone's
it's such, because this is the worst microphone I think I've ever had. I hope you can hear me back there. Justin, don't pay the bill for this mic. I'm blowing out
Don't
my
pay
voice
the
talking
bills
to
of
this
this
stupid mic. This is the worst mic I've ever had. Okay, now we'll
He
get back to
sounds
the
fine.
speech. I'm trying to
totally
get
fine.
their attention. Turn up the mic.
Turn off that mic.
It sounds fine.
Is it okay?
Elab, what's up? Something?
I had
And then I don't
Okay.
pay a bill, and they say Trump
Oh, do I want a
doesn't pay
coffee?
his
Fuck yeah.
contractors.
Thanks,
Fuck
Early.
yeah.
I love when Ela asks me if I want a coffee because it's like, let's go. Or it's a coffee time. Let's do coffee.
I want to say, actually, because we have a moment here, this has been really emotional, and it's just really nice to see both sides being able to talk and have a civil conversation.
I agree.
And educate each other. I've learned stuff from what
I
Hassan
learned
talked
stuff.
about
No
today.
question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, I definitely feel like I was moved in ways that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And I hope that people see, and I hope the audience agrees and doesn't ascend into dumb fucking.
No, well, obviously we had the chat off, but we do have our members Discord, and I've been monitoring that for the discussion that's been going on, and yeah, I think there's a lot of appreciation for the conversations that have been had today. In fact, there's so much appreciation that we just ticked over to 2
Really?
point.
People
We're
are
H
subbing?
H2.94, baby.
Wow.
We're almost back to H3. We're almost back to H3.
Well, 60,000's a lot at this pace.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
So Ela was just saying, first of all, that she appreciates that we're able to have this conversation. And I was saying that I've definitely been moved in ways that I didn't expect in having this conversation. And further, I said that I hope that people, it's a hard conversation to have, and I don't think a lot of people are sitting down and doing it in this way. And I respect you, immensely. And I really appreciate that we can do this. And I hope that people in the comments don't descend into dumb fucking name calling and that actually can just like be civil like we've been, if you're, you know what I mean? Okay, here's the last thing, Hassan.
All right.
If you're ready.
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
Holy shit, it's 2 p.m.
Sorry, bro.
It's all good.
It's definitely going longer than I thought. But so I saw this and my first thought was like, that's horrible. But I couldn't really find a lot of evidence to back it up. And well, let me play the clip.
I saw on the news today a guy who lives in Gaza said that Israelis are raping Palestinian women. Yes. Israelis raping Palestinian women is a well-documented part of Israelis' apartheid apparatus. So that part is not, that part, of course, comes with a...
Anyway, that's the heart and soul. I mean, I don't necessarily have to...
There is
I don't have to watch the rest because
there's a gag order that was recently released on an Israeli soldier that had
right here.
Raped a Palestinian woman, and this kind of there it is. The IDF removed the gag order in 2016.
He was arrested.
Yeah,
and he was publicly shamed. How is this systemic rape as part of the institution of Israel?
The same concept exists in the American police force, where any kind of sexual act under the coercive institutions of like being incarcerated is understandably and also technically and morally considered sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
There are reports of Palestinian women in captivity.
Oh shit.
Talking about that experience.
So let's see. I found one of the sources. I saw you like this tweet by this squirrel guy. So I just looked into
Zay Squirrel.
Yeah. So I just looked into all the sources he posted because I was genuinely curious to know if that was true. And I mean, so besides that article I just pulled up, which is like the one really prominent example I could find of an Israeli guard raping a Palestinian. And again, he was arrested and publicly named. But the other one, one of the ones that you quoted was like, I don't even know what the fuck this is. Care.com. It's literally just like a little blurb. Palestinian females freed from Israeli detention said more than 15 fellow Palestinian women were raped by Israeli interrogators to force them to confess to charges leveled against them and collaborate with the Israeli intelligence. Quote, Israeli investigators and intelligence officers keep videotapes of raping to blackmail the female detainees. She told IslamOnline.net, which is another website. So according to, I guess, this website, which I then went to, which just doesn't...
Oh, well, that's not going to be too helpful to you, is it?
Well, I translated it.
You translate it.
Yeah, but like it just, I don't understand. This doesn't seem like super credible, at least, or I mean, it might be credible.
Do you have an issue with CARE or Islam.net or the...
Well, what is this?
The lack of...
I mean, listen, that's a huge claim. 15 Palestinian women were raped.
Mm-hmm.
I was sexually abused and photographed, she said. But like, what? I don't know what this is. What is this?
What do you mean?
Is this a source?
You're asking if it's credible.
Yeah. Yes, CARE is credible. I think, at least.
What is
CARE is
There's no source. There's like nothing here. Like shit. I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary claim. I mean, fuck. Like it's serious to say that the Israeli apparatus is using rape systemically to oppress the Palestinians.
I think it's one of...
There's so many horrible things happening.
I think it's one of the many things that happens under institutionalization, and it happens in America as well, regardless of the same amount of care and consideration being given to those who are incarcerated in America. It's a similar concept. The CARE is the Council on American Islamic Relations, by the way.
Okay.
My dad's part of CARE, the Michigan chapter.
We love CARE.
There you go.
My only problem is that there's like literally no source to this.
I agree that doesn't seem the best. That information is not presented in a very clear way.
But because you're the dude that posted this, that you liked his tweet, used this as a source, and I don't know what this is. It just doesn't seem very. I mean, I don't.
Well, you didn't know what CARE was.
I didn't know what CARE was, but like,
right.
I just came to this. I just typed in the headline that I saw,
right,
and I got to this page, and I tried to do more research about Israeli guards raping Palestinians. I found like another. Let's see. There's a tiny. Oh no, not this. Frankly, there wasn't much else other than like sporadic, isolated, unconfirmed, kind of nebulous accusations. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying like this one article is the only real significant one that I could find. And the dude was arrested.
They do have, yes. I think one of the reasons as to why it is not as widely reported on is gag orders. You can remove them from time to time like it happened here. But
there's no evidence for that I'm aware of.
It's not incredibly it's not as incredibly well documented as some of the other things that Amnesty International has access to on the ground.
Okay. It's just I don't know. It rubbed me wrong a little bit because it's just a big claim to make, and I don't know. Like I'm not saying it's not true because the IDF is horrible and they do horrible things, but like it's a special kind of evil the way that you describe it that once again I think dehumanizes the Israelis.
Today, a guy who lives in Gaza said that Israelis are raping Palestinian women.
And his sources, a guy in Gaza said this, which again, I just want like one reputable source.
Israelis raping Palestinian women is a well-documented part of Israel's apartheid apparatus. So that part is not
well documented. Isn't true.
Yes. No. I think you're absolutely right. I think I should have used my words more carefully when saying that. It's a comment in passing, and that does have serious impact. I agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the partnering of the instance that you just showed, on top of the gag order, on top of the treatment of institutionalized people in general, and the sexual violence that they are subjected to, that is considered legal in both America and everywhere else, due to a lack of getting adequate adequate coverage to their issues.
Your point is that, and the incarcerated are abused.
On top of that, and on top of that, one thing that is not technically sexual violence, but coercion of a different magnitude is for example, gay Palestinians being blackmailed specifically to become sources of information.
I haven't read about that.
And things of that nature that still would be factored under that. You're right, though. I should have chosen my words more carefully.
Right, and listen.
And there is. I will present you more information on that as well.
Well, what does that mean?
Like I'll
look into
come back with more information for you.
And again, like everything you're super credible. It was just this one thing. It just rubbed me a little bit wrong. And like, listen, that's it. But I appreciate that you.
No, you're.
Thanks.
I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. That was basically that was, of all the things you said, that was the one thing that I was like, I don't know about that. So I'm glad that we talked about that. The other things I don't know if you want to talk about was my spat with your friends, which at this point I'm like just fully apologetic towards them, after talking about it and really, I don't know. I got more of an emotional insight.
No, it's understandable
from you today that impacted me, and even though, I felt provoked. I understand why, if in my opinion, they're not using the most delicate language because they're fucking angry and pissed. You know what I mean? And so like, I need to be more charitable, I think, and less reactive because their pain is valid and I need to acknowledge that and, be more forgiving of less delicate language.
Well, I'll get back to you with more information on the documentation on rapes under incarceration.
Okay.
Because there are more studies.
Okay.
That. I mean, there is more.
Well, great. I mean, that'll be nice. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Specifically, this.
Can I make one point on that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Rape under incarceration in a carceral structure in general is very difficult to study and document. The fact that doing so inside of an apartheid structure makes it even more difficult to document. And even then, there are still obviously witness testimonies that you can rely on in situations like this. I mean, okay, well, I'll.
Like the care thing was the only thing I could find.
There's definitely more. Ethan, that's
then
it's an inevitability that it happens. Basically, it's not like
I'm not
you're
saying it doesn't
not
happen,
correct,
bro. I'm just saying, like, I just want to know more. I just want a reliable source, and I just don't know what this is.
It's almost all on testimonials from Palestinian women, and that's, it's not exactly considered to be.
I'm not even finding the accusations though.
Okay.
Like I'm not even calling women liars or something. I want to make that clear. Like I'm not saying like they're lying. I can't even find the accusations to read. I mean, this is the only one, and it doesn't even say who's talking or who they're quoting or anything. I mean,
okay.
It's just nothing. But like I'm open to the conversation, of course, and if that's what's happening, I think it does need to be talked about. That's all.
You like men as well, not just women.
No,
okay.
I understand that men can also be raped and sexually assaulted. Of course. I mean, that's something that I did read, which I consider just kind of sporadic and nebulous because it was just hard to pin down a systemic thing that I could point to. Was just like, dudes were being like, penetrated with foreign objects. I mean, obviously that is also rape.
Yes.
Horrible.
Okay, good.
Sure.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in short, in closing, this dude, Mohammed, I mean, again, I apologize too. And Frogan, I apologize too. Is that how you say it?
Frogan is a foot soldier and has been
I hate that,
been a longtime fan of yours. You know, there are going to be other foot soldiers who are also of a Muslim background that may have said things that would upset you.
Right.
And that's something to consider when, you know, reacting to them.
You're right. I think the takeaway,
that's what I was trying to say when on the phone.
Less reactive, more charitable, and understanding, you know, their reasonable and warranted anger at Israel.
Oh my God.
That's it. That's everything.
All right, perfect. We did it. We solved the conflict.
I thought, like, first of all, I mean, we talked about a lot of shit. And I do feel like I was genuinely influenced by some stuff that you had shared.
Are you moving towards wrapping up the show?
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the Swifties?
It feels like it's maybe too late now.
Dan wants to talk about the Swiftie movie.
Well, I promise it's not about me, it's about our audience. They were promised an Era's movie review.
Go ahead.
It sucked. It sucked fucking dick. Fuck Taylor Swift.
Button.
Oh, careful, man. You're gonna get.
Yeah, watch out, bro.
By the way,
what a twist.
I apologize if it felt like I was like forcing you to comment on these terrible, whatever takes. That wasn't my intention. It was just to show stuff that upset me. You know what I mean?
No, I understand.
But I agree. Everything you said, I agree with. I mean, ultimately, we're in agreement. Ultimately. And in fact, I think you moved me even more towards your side. Or whatever side. I don't think there's sides. It's not the best way to put it. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Cool.
All right, everybody.
Zach's not here to play the music. Would you like me to just kind of
just
sing
like
it?
crickets. Longest episode of Leftovers ever.
We did it.